Hey everyone, I'm glad you stopped by tonight. These Reddit stories are meant to help you slow down and unwind. If the channel brings you some comfort, consider subscribing. It's free and keeps things going. And before we start, leave a good night message so nobody feels alone. My date said I violated her consent, and I am trying to understand what a kink even is. I am a 40-year-old guy, and I honestly thought I was about as vanilla as they come. I have been divorced for a few years and only recently started dating again. I met a woman named Lauren, who is 39, through a mutual friend. We live in the same city in the Midwest, and we both have steady jobs and kids from previous relationships. On paper, it felt easy and safe, which is what I thought I wanted. We went on 3 normal dates that involved dinner and talking about work and parenting and bad television. Nothing felt rushed or intense. We kissed goodnight once, and it felt fine. I went into the 4th date thinking it might finally be time to be physical, but still nothing wild or dramatic. I am including this context because I truly did not think I was stepping into any kind of gray area. Lauren invited me over to her place after dinner. We opened a bottle of wine and talked on the couch. At some point, we started kissing and things moved to her bedroom. I am not going to get graphic because that is not the point, and because I am still trying to wrap my head around what happened. What I will say is that everything felt mutual to me. She was kissing back and touching me, and there was no moment where she said stop or seemed uncomfortable. I did one thing that I have done with previous partners, and that I honestly thought was pretty normal. It was not something extreme, and it was not painful or degrading in my mind. Immediately after, Lauren pulled away and told me to stop. I stopped right away and asked if she was okay. She sat up and said that I had violated her consent and crossed a boundary involving kinks. I was honestly stunned. I apologized immediately and told her that was never my intention. I asked her to explain what she meant because I was confused. She said that what I did fell under a kink and that she had not consented to that. I told her I thought kink meant something much more niche and that I had no idea this counted. She got dressed and said intent does not matter when it comes to consent. She said she felt unsafe and disrespected. I felt like the worst person on earth and also completely lost. She asked me to leave, and I did without arguing. On the drive home, I replayed everything in my head over and over. I kept thinking about whether I missed a signal or pushed too far. I could not find the moment where she said no before that point. At the same time, I understand that consent is not just the absence of no. I get that now. What I am struggling with is the idea that I apparently did something that is considered a kink without knowing it or meaning it that way. I always thought kinks were things people discussed ahead of time and that were clearly labeled as such. I have never thought of myself as kinky. I am a pretty boring middle-aged guy who likes routine and predictability. The next morning, Lauren texted me. She said she needed space and that she was very upset. She reiterated that I violated her consent and that it brought up past experiences for her. I apologized again and told her I respected her feelings and would give her space. I did not try to defend myself or explain further because it felt inappropriate. Since then, we have not spoken. I am left sitting with this pit in my stomach, wondering if I am actually someone who crosses boundaries without realizing it. That thought scares me more than anything. I started talking to a close friend named Marcus, who is around my age and more experienced with dating post-divorce. He told me that consent conversations are a lot more nuanced now, and that many people consider a wider range of things to be kinks than they used to. He said that even things that seem common to some people should still be talked about explicitly. I accept that, and I wish I had known that before. At the same time, I cannot shake the feeling that I am being labeled as someone who intentionally violated consent when that is not who I am or want to be. Another layer that is stressing me out is the legal side of this. I have read horror stories online about misunderstandings turning into accusations that ruin lives. Lauren has not threatened anything and has not contacted me again, but my anxiety brain keeps going there. I work in a field where reputation matters. The idea that I could be seen as unsafe or predatory makes me sick. I keep asking myself if ignorance is truly no excuse in this situation, or if there is room for acknowledging that people have different definitions and expectations. I have been doing a lot of reading, and it seems like the definition of kink can vary widely. Some people define it as anything outside a very narrow idea of traditional intimacy. Others define it as specific power dynamics or role-based activities. None of this feels standardized. What scares me is that I thought I was operating within a normal range, and clearly Lauren did not. That gap in understanding had real emotional consequences for her, and I hate that I caused that pain. I also feel like I walked into a minefield without a map. I am trying to take responsibility where I should. I should have had a more explicit conversation before assuming anything. I should not have relied on past experiences with other partners as a guide. I get that. What I am struggling with is how to move forward without being paralyzed by fear. Do I need to ask for verbal consent for every specific action, like a checklist? That feels awkward and unromantic, but maybe that is just something I need to get over. I would rather be awkward than hurt someone. I also keep thinking about Lauren and her reaction. She seemed genuinely shaken. That tells me this hit something deeper for her. I respect that, and I am not angry at her. I am mostly sad that what I thought was a connection ended in such a painful way. I do not expect her to forgive me or explain further. I am not entitled to that. I just wish I understood more clearly what line I crossed so I can make sure I never cross it again with anyone else. This whole experience has forced me to question assumptions I did not even know I had. I thought being a decent person and stopping immediately when asked was enough. I now see that consent is more proactive than that. It is not just about stopping when told, but about making sure everyone is on the same page before anything happens. I can accept that lesson even though it came in a really hard way. I am posting this because I feel lost and honestly ashamed. I do not want to minimize Lauren's feelings, and I do not want to paint myself as a victim. I just want to understand, what exactly counts as a kink these days? How are people supposed to navigate this without turning intimacy into a legal deposition? Is it reasonable that something I thought was vanilla could be considered a violation? I am trying to learn and do better, but right now I just feel like I messed up in a way that cannot be undone, and that is a heavy thing to sit with. Update: my date said I violated her consent, and I am trying to understand what a kink even is. It has been a few weeks since I posted, and a lot has happened internally, even if not much has happened on the surface. I did not reach out to Lauren again because I meant it when I said I would give her space. About 10 days after everything happened, she sent me a message. It was calm and direct. She said she had thought about whether to say anything at all and decided she wanted to explain her perspective but not reopen the connection. I agreed to listen and nothing more. We met briefly at a coffee shop during the day. It was public and low pressure, which I appreciated. She told me that the specific thing I did was something she personally categorizes as a kink because of how it ties into control and vulnerability for her. She said that even though many people consider it normal, she does not. She also said that she freezes when surprised during intimacy, and that is why she did not speak up until after. Hearing that made my chest drop because I could see how my assumption collided with her history in a really bad way. She was clear that she did not think I intended to hurt her, and she was not planning to take any action beyond ending contact. She said she used the word violated because that is how it felt in her body in the moment, not because she was trying to label me as a bad person. That distinction mattered to me more than I can explain. I apologized again without qualifiers. I told her I was grateful she took the time to explain and that I was truly sorry for the harm caused. We left it there, and I have not heard from her since. After that conversation, I took a hard look at myself and how I approach dating. I realized that I have been operating on autopilot using experiences from my 20s and early 30s as a reference point. I am not dating the same people anymore, and the culture is not the same either. That does not mean one side is right and the other is wrong. It means assumptions are riskier now. I started talking to a therapist named Ellen, who specializes in relationships and communication. I wanted a neutral place to unpack the shame and anxiety I was carrying. One thing that helped was reframing this as a compatibility and communication failure rather than a moral verdict. That does not erase the impact on Lauren, but it helps me see a path forward that does not involve self-loathing. Ellen helped me understand that consent conversations do not have to be clinical or robotic. They can be simple and ongoing. She also emphasized that consent is contextual and personal, which explains why definitions vary so much. What feels neutral to one person can feel loaded to another. I also learned that many people assume silence equals comfort, when in reality, it can mean fear or dissociation. That was hard to hear, because it made me rethink past experiences. I am not spiraling into rewriting my entire history, but I am being more honest with myself about how much I relied on nonverbal cues. I thought that made me attentive. I now see how it can still leave room for misunderstanding. I went on another date recently with a woman named Rebecca. Before anything physical happened, I said plainly that I like to check in verbally and asked what she was comfortable with. It felt awkward for about 30 seconds, and then it felt fine. Nothing dramatic happened, and nothing crossed a line. That experience showed me that slowing down does not kill connection. If anything, it made me feel calmer and more present. I still think about Lauren, and I still feel regret. I accept that some harm cannot be undone, and that apologies do not erase impact. What I no longer feel is the constant fear that I am secretly dangerous or incapable of learning. This experience forced me to grow up in a way I probably should have earlier. I am not grateful for the pain it caused, but I am taking responsibility for what I can control going forward. I am sharing this update because I know how heavy it feels to sit with confusion and shame at the same time. I did not get a clean resolution or a second chance, and that is okay. What I did get was clarity and a better understanding of how easily people can talk past each other even with good intentions. I am moving forward more carefully and more consciously. That is the only real outcome I can offer. My wife said the condoms were from last year, and I do not know if I am supposed to believe her. I am a 32-year-old guy named Daniel, and I have been married to my wife Lauren, who is 29, for a little over 4 years now, and we have been together since our mid-20s, and for most of that time, I honestly believed we had a solid marriage built on trust and boring routines and shared plans for the future. We live in Ohio in a quiet suburb, and our life is not flashy, and that used to feel comforting to me. We both work full-time jobs and come home tired and talk about dinner and bills and what show we are watching next. I never thought I would be the kind of person posting something like this, but here I am, because my brain will not shut off and I feel like I am losing my grip on what is real. This started 2 nights ago in the most normal way possible. Lauren asked me to grab her wallet from her purse because she had already gotten into bed and did not feel like getting up again. Her purse was on the chair in our bedroom, and I picked it up and set it on the bed and started looking through it. I was not snooping, and I did not have any suspicion at that point. I was just doing what she asked. As I was moving things around, I felt something crinkly in one of the side pockets, and when I pulled it out, I saw 2 unopened condoms still in their foil wrappers. I froze. I honestly felt my stomach drop in a way I have never experienced before. Lauren and I have not used condoms in years. We stopped using them after we got married and switched to other birth control methods and eventually talked about trying for a baby in the next year or 2. Seeing those condoms felt like finding a foreign object in my own house. My mind immediately went to the worst possible place, and I hated that it did, but I could not stop it. I sat there for a second, staring at them, and trying to figure out if there was any innocent explanation that made sense. I could hear Lauren shifting in bed and asking if I found her wallet yet, and my hands were shaking. I walked back to the bed and handed her the wallet, and then held up the condoms and asked her what these were doing in her purse. The look on her face changed instantly. She did not scream or get angry right away, but her eyes widened and she looked genuinely startled. She sat up in bed and stared at them for a second and then let out a long breath and said, "Oh my God, I completely forgot those were even in there." She told me they must be from last year when she switched purses and that she must have forgotten to clean out all the pockets. I asked her to explain more, and she said that last year she had gone out with her coworkers for drinks a few times and had switched from her smaller purse to a larger one, and that she used to keep condoms in her purse back when she was single because it made her feel safer, and that she probably just moved everything over without thinking. She said she had not even realized they were still there and that it meant nothing. I wanted to believe her immediately. I really did. Lauren sounded calm and matter-of-fact, and she did not stumble over her words or get defensive in that moment. But the problem was that the explanation did not sit right with me the more I thought about it. If those condoms were from before we were married then, why were they still unopened and in such good condition? And why were they in the side pocket of the purse she uses almost every day? And why had I never seen them before? I asked her when exactly she switched purses, and she said sometime last summer. I asked her why she would have condoms in her purse last summer when we were already married, and she said she meant they were even older than that, and she must have moved them without realizing. I could feel my chest getting tight because the timeline felt fuzzy, and I hate when things feel fuzzy. Lauren started getting upset at that point and asked me why I was interrogating her over something so small. She said I was acting like I did not trust her at all, and that hurt her. I told her that I was trying to understand, because, from my perspective, this was not a small thing. She rolled her eyes and said I was blowing it out of proportion, and that if she was cheating, she would not be dumb enough to leave condoms in her purse. That comment stuck with me in a bad way. It felt dismissive, and it also felt like something someone would say to shut down a conversation rather than actually address the concern. I did not say that out loud, though. I just nodded and said I needed some time to think. That night, I barely slept. Lauren fell asleep pretty quickly, but I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I kept thinking about all the little things from the past year that I had brushed off at the time. The nights she came home later than usual. The new coworker she mentioned a few times, named Jason, who she said was annoying but also funny. The way she had started guarding her phone a bit more and turning it face down on the table. None of those things seemed like smoking guns on their own, but now my brain was lining them up like evidence. The next morning, I went to work feeling like a zombie. I could not focus, and my coworker Mike noticed and asked if everything was okay. I did not tell him the details, but I told him Lauren and I were having some trust issues, and he immediately told me not to jump to conclusions without proof. Mike is divorced and tends to see things in black and white, and he said if I did not have concrete evidence, then I should not accuse her of anything. That made sense logically, but emotionally, I was still spiraling. When I got home that evening, Lauren acted like everything was normal. She asked about my day and talked about a new project at work and what we should make for dinner. I felt like I was watching someone perform a role, and I did not know if it was genuine or an act. At one point, she noticed I was quiet and asked if I was still upset about the condom thing. I said yes because I was still confused and uncomfortable. She sighed and said she felt like I was punishing her for something she did not do. I asked her if she would be willing to let me look through her phone just to put my mind at ease. I know that is a controversial thing to ask, and part of me hated myself for even considering it, but I was desperate. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She said absolutely not, and that her phone was her private space, and that if I needed to invade her privacy to feel secure, then we had bigger problems. That answer hurt more than I expected. I told her that if there was nothing to hide, then showing me would not be a big deal. She said that was manipulative and that trust does not work that way. The conversation escalated into an argument and voices were raised, and at one point she accused me of projecting my own insecurities onto her. We ended up sleeping in separate rooms that night, which we have never done before in our marriage. I slept on the couch and stared at my phone and considered texting my sister, Emily, to ask for advice, but I did not want to drag family into it yet. I felt embarrassed and ashamed that my marriage suddenly felt so fragile. The next day I did something I am not proud of. While Lauren was in the shower, I checked her purse again. The condoms were still there. I took pictures of them on my phone like that would somehow help me later. I hated myself for doing that, but I also felt like I needed something tangible to hold on to, because everything else felt slippery. I also checked our bank statements and phone bill that night. I did not find anything obviously suspicious. No hotel charges, no weird expenses. Her phone bill did not show any unfamiliar numbers, but I know that does not mean much in the age of messaging apps. I am stuck in this awful limbo, where I do not have enough evidence to accuse her of cheating, but I also do not feel reassured by her explanation. Part of me worries that I am about to blow up my marriage over something that really is nothing. Another part of me worries that if I ignore this feeling, I will look back years from now and realize this was the moment I should have paid attention. I also keep thinking about the legal side of things, which makes me feel cold and calculating, but I cannot help it. If she is cheating and we end up divorcing, I want to know what that would look like financially and whether infidelity even matters in our state. I hate that my mind is going there, but once trust cracks, everything else starts to wobble too. Lauren has been alternating between being affectionate and being distant. One minute she will hug me and tell me she loves me, and the next she will snap at me for being quiet. I do not know how to act around her because I am afraid that if I push too hard, she will shut down completely, but if I do nothing, I will keep feeling like I am lying to myself. I keep replaying her explanation about the purses and the timing and trying to see it from her perspective. It is possible she genuinely forgot those condoms were there. People forget things all the time. I know that. But it is also possible that she panicked and grabbed the first explanation she could think of. I do not know which possibility scares me more. I have not told anyone else in our lives about this. To everyone on the outside, we are still the normal married couple who posts pictures of our dog and talks about home improvement projects. Inside, I feel like I am constantly on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet, because I do not know what else to do. Can I trust my wife? Am I being paranoid and unfair? Or is this one of those situations where my gut is trying to tell me something and I need to listen before it is too late? Update. My wife said the condoms were from last year, and I do not know if I am supposed to believe her. It has been about 2 weeks since I first found the condoms, and I honestly did not expect things to spiral the way they did. But here we are, and I feel like I owe an update because a lot has happened and my head is still spinning. After I posted before, I tried to take some of the advice about not exploding without more information, and also about actually communicating instead of letting everything rot in silence. A few days after that post, Lauren and I finally sat down at the kitchen table and had what felt like the most serious conversation of our marriage. I told her that I was not trying to accuse her of cheating, but that my trust was shaken and that I needed more than a vague explanation to move forward. I told her that the condoms themselves were not the only issue anymore, but how defensive she got and how she shut down when I asked for reassurance. She cried a lot during that conversation, which is something she does not usually do. She said she felt blindsided and hurt, that I would even think she could cheat on me, and that the request to look through her phone made her feel like I saw her as a suspect instead of a partner. She said she understood why the situation looked bad, but that she felt like no matter what she said it would never be enough, because I had already decided she was guilty in my head. I told her that was not true, but I also admitted that my mind had gone to dark places and that I was scared. I told her I felt like I was losing my sense of reality and that I did not want to live in a marriage where I was constantly doubting her. I asked her again if there was anything she had not told me about those condoms or about anything else that might explain why they were there. She looked me straight in the eyes and said no. She said she has not cheated on me emotionally or physically, and that the condoms were exactly what she said they were. She said she used to keep them in her purse for years out of habit and safety, and that when she switched purses, she did not think about it. She said she did not even notice them because she never uses that pocket. She said she reacted badly because she felt accused and trapped. For a moment, I actually felt myself relaxing because she sounded sincere and exhausted and like someone who just wanted this nightmare to end. Then she said something that cracked everything open again. She said that if I truly did not trust her then, maybe we needed to think about couples counseling because she could not keep proving her innocence over and over. I agreed to counseling because at that point I did not see another option. We scheduled an appointment with a therapist named Karen who specializes in marriage issues, and we had our first session last week. Sitting in that room with a stranger while talking about our private life was surreal but also weirdly grounding. During the session, Karen asked us to walk through the incident step by step, and when Lauren explained her side again, something caught my attention. She mentioned that she used to keep condoms in her purse even early in our relationship because she did not fully trust birth control at the time. That immediately made me do mental math because that would have been years ago, and we moved houses twice since then, and she has changed purses more than once. I asked her about that, and she paused for a long time. She then admitted that there was one more detail she had not shared because she did not think it mattered and because she was afraid it would make things worse. She said that about a year ago, one of her coworkers had made her uncomfortable during a work trip and that she had bought condoms again as a precaution because she was scared and did not know how to process it. She said nothing happened and that she did not tell me because she felt stupid and embarrassed and because she handled it on her own by avoiding him afterward. Hearing that hit me like a truck. Part of me felt horrible that she went through something scary and did not feel like she could tell me. Another part of me was furious that she left this out while insisting she had told me everything. I asked her why she did not mention this earlier when I found the condoms. She said she panicked and thought I would misunderstand and accuse her of something even worse. Karen stepped in at that point and tried to slow things down, but my emotions were all over the place. I asked Lauren why she would keep condoms from that situation for a year and not throw them away. She said she honestly did not know and that maybe it was a trauma response or maybe she just forgot about them after the situation passed. After the session, I felt numb. I did not know what to believe anymore. Lauren was upset because she felt like her attempt to be honest had only made things worse. I was upset because the story had changed and because now there was a coworker involved even if she insists nothing happened. Since then, I have been paying closer attention to everything. I noticed that the coworker she mentioned is not Jason, but another guy named Mark who no longer works at her company. I noticed that she has been extra attentive and affectionate, like she is trying to reassure me, but it sometimes feels forced. I also noticed that my own behavior has changed, and I hate it. I catch myself watching her reactions and overanalyzing every text notification, and I do not like the person that is turning me into. I did talk to my sister Emily eventually, and she was blunt with me. She said that either I choose to believe my wife and commit to rebuilding trust through counseling, or I accept that I do not trust her and stop dragging things out. She said living in limbo will destroy both of us. Right now, that is where things stand. We have another counseling session scheduled, and I am trying to figure out whether my gut is telling me something is wrong or whether my fear is louder than reality. I still think about those condoms every day, and I wish I had never found them because my marriage feels permanently altered. I do not know yet what decision I will make, but I know I cannot keep living like this forever. Update. My wife said the condoms were from last year, and I do not know if I am supposed to believe her. This will probably be the last time I update, because things have finally reached a point where a decision was made, and even though it hurts, I feel like I can breathe again for the first time in months. A lot happened between the last update and now, and it was not one dramatic moment, but a slow unraveling that forced me to look at the truth instead of the version I wanted to believe. We continued couples counseling for several weeks. Some sessions felt productive and calm, and others felt like reopening the same wound over and over. Karen kept pushing us to talk about trust rather than the condoms themselves, and that is when things started to shift in a way I did not expect. The more we talked, the more I realized that this was not just about what was in Lauren's purse, but about how disconnected we had become long before I found them. During one session, Karen asked Lauren when she first started feeling distant from me. Lauren hesitated and then said it was around a year and a half ago when work became overwhelming and she felt like we were just roommates going through the motions. Hearing that hurt because I had felt the same way but assumed it was just a phase we would eventually snap out of. I asked her why she never told me, and she said she did not want to rock the boat and thought it would pass. A week later, something happened that finally broke the stalemate. Lauren came home late again, and I could tell she had been crying. She sat me down and told me she needed to be honest because she could not continue counseling while holding things back. She admitted that while she did not physically cheat, she had formed an emotional connection with someone from work around the same time she bought the condoms. It was not Mark, but another coworker named Ethan who is married with kids. She said they vented to each other and texted a lot, and that it crossed lines emotionally even if nothing physical happened. She said the condoms were bought during that period not because she planned to sleep with him, but because she was confused and spiraling and did not trust herself. She said that scared her enough to pull back before anything happened, but she never fully processed it or told me. She said when I found the condoms, she panicked because telling the full truth felt like detonating a bomb in our marriage. Hearing that was devastating, but also clarifying in a strange way. The fog lifted. My gut finally made sense. I was angry, but not surprised anymore. I told her that emotional cheating was still a betrayal, and that the trickle truth hurt almost as much as the situation itself. She cried and apologized over and over, and said she would do anything to fix things. I asked her a question that had been sitting in my chest for weeks. I asked her if she was still in contact with Ethan. She said no at first, and then corrected herself, and said not regularly, but they still follow each other on social media and occasionally like each other's posts. That was the moment I knew something fundamental had broken. I told her I needed space to think, and I went to stay with my friend Ryan for a few days. Being away from the house gave me clarity I could not find while living inside the tension. I realized that even if nothing physical ever happened, the trust I had in Lauren was gone, and I did not know if I could rebuild it without losing myself in the process. I also realized how exhausted I was from constantly questioning reality and reading between lines. When I came back, we had one final, long conversation. I told her that I believed she was sorry, and that she did not set out to hurt me, but that intentions do not erase impact. I told her that the constant changes in her story and the emotional affair had permanently altered how safe I felt with her. I told her I did not want to become a suspicious, bitter version of myself just to stay married. Lauren asked if there was any chance we could work through it given more time. I told her that maybe in another universe or at another point in our lives, but right now the damage was too deep. We both cried. There was no screaming and no insults, just grief. We have since decided to separate and are in the process of figuring out the legal and logistical details. We do not have kids, which makes things simpler, but it is still painful dividing a life we built together. Some days I feel relief, and other days I feel crushing sadness and doubt. I still miss her and the version of our marriage I thought we had. What I have learned from this is that sometimes your instincts are not accusing, but warning. I wish we had addressed our emotional distance earlier before it manifested in secrecy and half-truths. I also wish I had trusted myself sooner instead of feeling guilty for questioning things that did not add up. For anyone reading this who finds themselves in a similar situation, I will say this. Trust is not just about fidelity, but about honesty when things start to crack. Once that honesty disappears, everything else follows. I do not hate my wife, and I do not think she is a villain. I think we were two people who stopped communicating and made choices that slowly eroded something precious. I am starting therapy on my own now and focusing on rebuilding myself. The future feels uncertain, but also open in a way it has not felt in a long time. I am heartbroken, but I am no longer stuck in limbo, and for now, that has to be enough. My husband's ex-wife messaged me within 24 hours of our wedding, and now I don't know what to do. I got married on a Saturday in late May, the kind of day that feels like it was ordered out of a catalog. Warm, but not hot, blue sky, soft breeze that kept my veil moving just enough to make me feel dramatic in a good way. I married Evan after 3 years together, and I truly believed I was walking into the safest, happiest chapter of my life. The wedding itself was small, but perfect for us. My sister Rachel cried so hard she had to redo her makeup twice. Evan's best friend, Marcus, forgot his ring pillow in the car and sprinted across the parking lot like he was in an action movie. My dad, Thomas, squeezed my hands before walking me down the aisle and whispered, "You picked a good one." I believed him. Evan had been married once before, long before we met. His ex-wife's name was Laura. They divorced about 5 years before we started dating. He didn't talk about her much, only that they married young, grew into different people, and ended things without kids and without drama, at least according to him. I never pushed for details because I didn't want to be the girlfriend obsessed with the past. I trusted him. The reception ended around 10 that night. We were exhausted, happy, and a little drunk on champagne and adrenaline. We didn't even go on our honeymoon right away because of work schedules, so we went back to our apartment, now our marital home, in our joking language, and collapsed on the couch, still half-dressed. The next morning, I woke up early, out of habit. Evan was still asleep, sprawled across the bed like a starfish. I grabbed my phone to scroll mindlessly before getting up. That's when I saw the message request. The name made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Laura. I stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't even known she still had my number. We'd never spoken directly before. I knew what she looked like from old photos on Evan's social media that he never bothered to delete. A pretty woman with dark hair and sharp eyebrows. The kind of face that looks confident even when neutral. I almost ignored it. But curiosity and anxiety won. The message was long. She congratulated me first. She said she hoped the wedding was beautiful and that Evan looked happy. Then she said she felt she owed me some honesty woman to woman. That phrase alone made my heart start pounding. She said she and Evan didn't just drift apart. She said he had cheated on her near the end of their marriage. She said she found out because a woman showed up at their apartment looking for him while he was at work. She said he begged her not to leave, promised it was a mistake, and then did it again a few months later. She said the reason they didn't have kids wasn't because they didn't want them. It was because he kept putting it off until she finally realized he never planned to have them with her. She said she wasn't trying to ruin my marriage, but that if she were in my place, she would want to know. I read it 3 times. Then I locked my phone and just sat there in bed, staring at the wall. Evan woke up maybe 20 minutes later, smiling and stretching, still glowing with that we just got married energy. He leaned over to kiss me and said, "Good morning, wife." I almost cried right there. I didn't tell him about the message right away. I said I had a headache and needed coffee. He made breakfast like he always does on weekends, humming to himself like nothing in the world was wrong. I kept thinking, what if she's lying? What if she's bitter? What if she's jealous? But why message me now, less than a day after my wedding, if it wasn't true, or at least partly true? That afternoon, after he went out to run errands, I called my best friend, Danielle. She's the kind of person who gets very quiet when something is serious. I read her the message word for word. She didn't interrupt me. When I finished, she said, "Do you believe her?" I told her I didn't know. She said, "Then you have to talk to him. Not now, not tomorrow, but soon. You can't live with that in your head." When Evan came home, I acted normal. Too normal, probably. I laughed too hard at his jokes. I asked too many questions about the grocery store. He noticed. He asked me, "Are you okay?" I said yes. I lied. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time he shifted next to me, my mind went back to Laura's words. I wondered how many things I didn't know about the man sleeping beside me. I wondered how many times he had told me stories about his past that were edited, cleaned up, made prettier. 2 days later, I told him. We were sitting at the kitchen table, eating leftovers from our wedding. I said his name, and he looked up, still smiling. I told him Laura messaged me. His face changed so fast, it scared me. He didn't look angry. He looked afraid. I read the message out loud. When I finished, the room felt heavy, like the air had thickened. He didn't speak right away. He rubbed his hands together like he was cold. Then he said, "Some of that is true. I felt my stomach drop." He admitted he cheated once. He said it was a stupid mistake, that he hated himself for it, that he told Laura right away. He said the second time she mentioned wasn't really cheating, that they were already basically done, just still living together. He said he didn't want kids back then because he felt trapped and unhappy, not because he didn't want them at all. He said Laura was bitter and trying to hurt him because seeing him move on made her angry. I asked him why he never told me. He said he was ashamed. He said he wanted to be a better man with me, not the man he used to be. I asked him if he ever cheated on me. He swore he hadn't. He said he never would. I wanted to believe him. I still do. But there's a difference between wanting to believe and actually believing. Since then, everything feels slightly off. He's still kind, still loving, still the man I married, but now every late night at work makes my chest tighten. Every time his phone buzzes and he doesn't check it right away, my mind goes places I don't want it to go. Laura hasn't messaged me again. I don't know if she said her piece and walked away or if she's waiting to see what I do with it. My mom, Linda, noticed something was wrong when I visited her last week. She asked me if marriage was already stressing me out. I told her I was just tired. I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of two realities. In one, Evan made mistakes, learned from them, and became a better man, and I get to have the life I dreamed of with him. In the other, I married someone who knows how to lie smoothly and convincingly, and I just haven't caught him yet. I keep replaying our past in my head. The nights he stayed late at work. The one business trip that got extended by 2 days. The one time I found a long blonde hair on his jacket when my hair is dark. At the time, I brushed everything off. Now I don't know what to think. He keeps asking me if I'm okay. He keeps trying to make plans for our future, trips we'll take, things we'll buy, names he likes for future kids. Every time he says our kids, I think about what Laura said, and I wonder if I'm just the woman he finally decided to settle for, or if I'm the woman he truly changed for. I don't want to be the kind of wife who checks his phone when he's in the shower. I don't want to be suspicious and bitter and scared. But I also don't want to be naive. Sometimes I think about messaging Laura back and asking for proof, asking for details, asking for dates. Then I imagine her enjoying the power she suddenly has over my life, and I stop. I'm only days into my marriage, and already it feels like I'm carrying something heavy and invisible that no one else can see. Everyone around me is still in celebration mode, still calling me newlywed, still asking how it feels to be married. I smile and say it feels great. But inside, I keep asking myself the same question over and over. Did I just marry the man he is now, or the man he's always been? Update. My husband's ex-wife messaged me within 24 hours of our wedding, and now I don't know what to do. A lot has happened since I wrote everything out, and I honestly didn't think I would be back so soon with this much to say. I tried to just sit with things and let them settle, but instead, they got louder. After that conversation at the kitchen table, Evan became almost too perfect. He started texting me sweet messages during the day, leaving little notes in my bag, planning date nights like he was afraid I might disappear if he blinked. Part of me appreciated the effort. Another part of me felt like he was trying to cover something up. I decided I couldn't live in my own head anymore, so I messaged Laura back. I kept it short. I said I wasn't looking to fight, but if she was telling the truth, I needed more than vague statements. I asked for dates, names, anything real. She replied the next day. She gave me a timeline. She told me the first affair happened about 8 months before their divorce. She gave me the woman's first name, Kayla, and said she worked with Evan at the time. She said the second woman was someone he met through friends, and she didn't know her well enough to give me more than a description. She told me about the night the woman showed up at their apartment, crying and confused, and how Evan lied straight to both of their faces before finally admitting it later. She also sent me screenshots of old messages between her and Evan from years ago. In them, he was apologizing, promising he would change, begging her not to leave. The dates lined up with what she told me. Seeing his name in those messages, saying things I had never heard him say, made my hands shake. That night, I showed Evan everything. He went quiet in a way I had never seen before. He didn't deny it. He didn't argue about the details. He just sat there and said, I was a terrible person back then. I asked him why he minimized it when I first confronted him. He said he was scared. He said he didn't want to lose me. He said he thought if he admitted everything, I would walk away. I told him hiding the truth made it worse, not better. He cried. I had never seen him cry like that. He said he hated who he used to be. He said he went to therapy after his divorce and worked on himself. He said meeting me was when he finally felt like he could be the man he always wanted to be. I asked him again if he had ever cheated on me. He swore no. He said if he ever did, he would deserve to lose me. He said he would never do that again. I wanted to believe him so badly that it hurt. But trust doesn't come back just because someone cries. A few days later, I found out something else. Not through his phone, not through spying, but through his friend Marcus, the same guy who almost forgot our rings. We were all hanging out, and Evan went to grab drinks. Marcus, a little tipsy, started talking about how proud he was of Evan for not messing it up this time. I asked him what he meant. He looked uncomfortable. He said, because of his past. I asked him what he knew about his past. Marcus told me he knew about the cheating. He said Evan had talked about it years ago, how badly he screwed up, how he lost someone good because he couldn't get his act together. I asked Marcus if Evan ever cheated after that. Marcus hesitated, then said no, not that he knew of. The problem was not what Marcus said. It was that he knew more than I did. Evan had told his friends the truth, but gave me a softened version. When I confronted Evan about that, he admitted it. He said it was easier to be honest with people who weren't emotionally tied to him the way I was. That hurt more than the cheating story itself. I spent a night at my sister Rachel's place. I told her everything. She didn't tell me what to do. She just said, "You don't owe anyone forgiveness on a schedule." That sentence stayed with me. Evan came over the next day. He looked exhausted. He said he would do anything to fix this. He offered couples therapy. He offered to give me full access to his phone, his email, everything. I told him I didn't want to be his warden. I didn't want a marriage built on surveillance. I told him what scared me the most was not that he cheated years ago. It was that he looked me in the eyes after we got married and only told me half the truth. He said he was wrong. He said he should have told me everything before we got married. He said he didn't realize how much damage hiding it would do. I asked him if he would still have married me if I had known everything. He said yes. I asked him if he thought I would have married him. He didn't answer right away. That silence said more than anything else. Right now, I am still married. We are still living together. But something fundamental has shifted. I no longer feel like I know him completely. And once that feeling is gone, I don't know how you get it back. I think about Laura sometimes, and I wonder how much of her life looked like mine does now, full of love on the outside and doubt on the inside. I don't hate her. I don't even blame her. If anything, I understand why she finally said something. Evan keeps asking me what I need. The honest answer is, I don't know. I need time. I need consistency. I need to see who he is when things are hard, not when he's trying to impress me. I don't know yet if this marriage will survive. I don't know if love is enough to rebuild trust that cracked this early. All I know is that I am no longer blindly certain, and that is a scary way to start a life with someone. Every night when I lie next to him, I still feel his warmth, still recognize his smell, still remember why I fell in love with him. But now there's a space between us that wasn't there before, and I don't know if it will close or if it will slowly grow until there is nothing left but the memory of what we hoped this would be. Stories number 4. My best friend's wedding became the breaking point during the worst week of my life. I never thought I would be the kind of person questioning whether to back out of my best friend's wedding a month before it happened, but here I am writing this because I genuinely do not know what I should do anymore. I am exhausted emotionally and mentally, and I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I am being dramatic or if I finally reached a limit that should have been there a long time ago. I am a 29-year-old woman, and my best friend is 30. I will call her Lauren. We have known each other since sophomore year of college. We were inseparable for years. Same major, same friend group, same apartment after graduation. When she met her now fiancé, Mark, I was happy for her and supported the relationship even when it meant we spent less time together. When he proposed last year, she asked me to be her maid of honor, and I said yes without hesitation. At the time, it felt natural. We had always talked about being in each other's weddings. I did not realize how much pressure that title would come with, or how little grace I would be given when my own life started falling apart. To explain why this week mattered so much, I need to explain what happened. On Monday, I was laid off from my job. No warning, no performance issues, just a company-wide restructuring. I work in marketing, and the job market is brutal right now. I left that meeting in shock, sat in my car, and cried until my head hurt. On Tuesday, my dad was hospitalized. He lives in another state, and I got the call from my mom early in the morning. He had chest pain and trouble breathing. They were running tests and keeping him overnight. I booked a flight for later that week because I needed to see him and support my mom. On Wednesday, my landlord emailed me saying my rent was increasing by a huge amount when my lease renews in 2 months. Combined with losing my job, it sent me into a full panic. I barely slept that night. On Thursday, my dog, Charlie, got sick. He is older and has been my emotional support through everything. The vet said it might be his kidneys, and they needed to do more tests. I sat on the floor of the clinic holding him and trying not to break down. By Friday, I was running on fumes. That morning, Lauren texted me asking if I had finished addressing invitations and finalizing the bachelorette weekend itinerary. I stared at my phone and felt something in me snap just a little. I texted back and told her I was having a really hard week and might need a couple of days before I could focus on wedding stuff. I did not dump everything on her. I did not ask for anything. I just asked for a little understanding. Her response was, "I get that you're stressed, but this wedding doesn't plan itself. I really need you to step up." That message hurt more than I expected. I replied and briefly explained that I had lost my job and that my dad was in the hospital. I thought that would change her tone. It didn't. She responded that she was sorry about my dad, but that she had already told everyone I was handling these tasks, and now she looked bad. She said she was under a lot of pressure and needed me to be reliable. I put my phone down and cried. I still did the invitation addresses that night because I felt guilty. My hand was shaking the whole time. On Saturday, she called me. I assumed she was calling to check in. Instead, she launched into a list of things I had done wrong recently. She said I was distant, that I wasn't excited enough, that I made everything about my problems lately. She said being a bride was the most stressful thing she had ever experienced, and she felt unsupported. I tried to explain again what was going on. I told her about my job, my dad, my dog, and my rent. I told her I was overwhelmed and doing my best. She sighed and said everyone has stuff going on. This is my once-in-a-lifetime moment. Something about that sentence flipped a switch in me. I told her I needed a break from the conversation. She accused me of being selfish and hanging up on her. That night, I flew out to see my parents. My dad was stable, but scared. Sitting in that hospital room put everything into perspective. I realized how fragile life is and how little energy I had left to pour into someone who could not see past their own stress. On Sunday morning, I woke up to multiple texts from Lauren. She was upset I hadn't replied. She said she needed reassurance that I was still committed. She asked if I even wanted to be her maid of honor anymore. I stared at that message for a long time. For the first time, I wondered if the answer was no. When I got back home a few days later, Charlie's test results came back. He needs ongoing treatment. It is expensive. I sat on my couch doing math in my head and trying not to spiral. Lauren texted again that evening asking me to attend a last-minute dress fitting and to pay my portion of the bachelorette house by the end of the week. I told her I needed to talk. We met at a coffee shop. I looked terrible. I hadn't been sleeping, and I was emotionally raw. She walked in, talking about centerpieces like nothing had happened. I told her calmly that the way she spoke to me during that week hurt me deeply. I told her I felt like my pain didn't matter to her at all. I told her I needed compassion, not criticism. She got defensive immediately. She said she was stressed. She said she didn't mean it like that. She said I was taking things too personally. She said a maid of honor should be able to put personal stuff aside for a few months. That was the moment I realized she truly did not get it. Or maybe she didn't want to. I told her I was considering stepping down as maid of honor. Not because I don't care about her, but because I cannot handle the emotional and financial expectations right now. I said I could still attend the wedding and support her as a guest. She looked at me like I had slapped her. She said I was abandoning her. She said people would talk. She said she would never forgive me for ruining this time for her. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I just told her I needed to prioritize my mental health and my family. I left the coffee shop shaking. Since then, mutual friends have been texting me. Some say I should suck it up and that weddings are stressful. Others quietly say they understand but don't want to get involved. Mark texted me saying Lauren is devastated and that I should reconsider. I feel torn apart. I feel guilty and angry and sad all at once. This is someone I loved like a sister. But when I was drowning, she asked me why I wasn't swimming faster. I am not saying she's a bad person. I am saying she was a bad friend to me when it mattered most. Now I am stuck wondering if stepping back makes me selfish or if staying would mean betraying myself. I never wanted to be the problem. I just wanted to be treated like a human being during the hardest week of my life. Update: my best friend's wedding became the breaking point during the worst week of my life. I waited a bit before writing this because everything that followed felt unreal and I needed time to process it without reacting purely out of emotion. A lot has happened since I stepped down as maid of honor, and it has changed how I see my friendship with Lauren in ways I didn't expect. The day after I posted, Lauren showed up at my apartment unannounced. I knew it was her because she knocked in that aggressive, impatient way she always does when she's already upset. I almost didn't open the door, but part of me hoped she had come to apologize or at least listen. She didn't. She walked in without waiting for an invitation and immediately started crying. Not quiet crying, loud sobbing that felt performative. She kept saying she couldn't believe I would do this to her and that everyone was asking questions she didn't know how to answer. She said her mom was furious and that her bridesmaids were confused and stressed because now everything was falling on them. I told her gently that this conversation was exactly why I needed space. I told her I was still unemployed, my dad was still recovering, and my dog had just started treatment. I told her I had nothing left to give. She snapped back that she didn't ask me to fix my life during her wedding year. That sentence hit me harder than anything she had said before. It made it painfully clear that she saw my struggles as inconveniences rather than real events happening to me. She accused me of being jealous of her happiness. That honestly shocked me. I have celebrated her relationship for years. I supported her when she fought with Mark. I defended him to others when they questioned his behavior. Hearing that she thought I was jealous felt like she had rewritten our entire history to fit her narrative. I told her I wasn't jealous. I was hurt. I was exhausted. I was disappointed. I told her that if the roles were reversed, I would never have spoken to her the way she spoke to me. She went quiet after that. For a moment, I thought it finally landed. Then she said something that ended the conversation for me completely. She said if I really cared about her, I would prove it by sticking it out no matter what else was going on in my life. I told her that love should not require self-destruction. I told her I was done discussing it. I asked her to leave. After she left, I blocked her number. That was not an impulsive decision. It was something I had never imagined doing. But I knew if I didn't, she would keep pushing and I would keep breaking. The fallout was immediate. Her mom messaged me on Facebook telling me I had deeply hurt her daughter and that I should be ashamed for abandoning her during such an important time. I didn't respond. One of the bridesmaids unfollowed me on everything. Another sent me a long text saying she understood, but that Lauren was spiraling and I should reconsider for everyone's sake. That message made me realize something important. Everyone wanted me to absorb the damage so things could go back to being comfortable for them. Meanwhile, my life didn't magically stabilize. I had interviews that went nowhere. My dad had another scare that sent him back to the ER. Charlie's medication made him lethargic, and watching him struggle broke my heart daily. But something surprising happened too. Without the constant wedding pressure, I could breathe again. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped jumping every time my phone buzzed. I felt sad, but also lighter. About 2 weeks later, Mark emailed me. Not texted, emailed. He said he wanted to understand my side and asked if we could talk. I agreed, because despite everything, I respected him. We met for a walk in a public park. He admitted that Lauren had been under extreme stress and that she felt abandoned. I told him calmly but honestly what that week had been like for me and how dismissed I felt. He listened, truly listened. He didn't interrupt or minimize. At the end, he said something that stuck with me. He said he didn't realize how often Lauren expected people to bend until they broke for her. He said planning the wedding had brought out parts of her he was struggling with too. That conversation didn't fix anything, but it validated me in a way I desperately needed. The wedding happened last weekend. I did not attend. I sent a card weeks earlier with a simple message wishing them well. I heard through mutual friends that Lauren barely mentioned me publicly, but cried privately about the friendship ending. I don't doubt she is hurt. I never wanted to hurt her. But here's the truth I've come to accept. A friendship that only survives when one person sacrifices themselves is not a healthy friendship. I spent years being the dependable one, the forgiving one, the flexible one. When I finally needed grace, there was none left for me. I still grieved the friendship. I missed the version of her who used to sit on my floor eating takeout and laughing until we cried. But that version doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe I was the only one holding on to it. I found a new job this week. It doesn't pay as much, but it's stable. My dad is home now and recovering slowly. Charlie is responding to treatment. Life is still hard, but it is moving forward. I don't know if Lauren and I will ever speak again. Maybe one day she will see things differently. Maybe she won't. What I do know is that choosing myself during the worst period of my life was not selfish. It was necessary. If losing a role in a wedding cost me a friendship, then that friendship was already standing on very fragile ground. Update. My best friend's wedding became the breaking point during the worst week of my life. I didn't think I would ever write another update, but something happened that felt like the actual ending of this chapter, and I needed to get it out of my system so I can finally move on. About a month after the wedding, I unblocked Lauren. Not because I wanted to reopen the friendship, but because I was tired of feeling tense every time I thought about her name. I didn't reach out. I just removed the block and let it sit there quietly. A week later, she messaged me. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't angry either. It was short and oddly formal. She said she hoped I was doing okay, and that married life had been overwhelming, but good. She said she still felt hurt, but didn't want things to end on such a bad note. I stared at that message for a long time. Old me would have rushed to smooth things over. Old me would have taken responsibility for emotions that weren't mine. This time, I waited a full day before responding. When I did reply, I was honest. I told her I was glad she reached out. I told her I was doing better. I also told her that what happened between us wasn't just about the wedding. I told her I needed accountability, not just closure. That's when the conversation finally turned real. She admitted she felt entitled to my time and energy because she assumed I would always be there no matter what. She said she didn't realize how harsh she sounded because in her mind, everyone was supposed to rally around her. She also admitted she resented that my crises took attention away from her excitement. Hearing that hurt, but it was also strangely validating. It confirmed what I had felt all along. I told her that being honest, that resentment changed how safe I felt with her. I told her that when I was at my lowest, she made me feel like a burden. There was a long pause. Then she apologized. Not a perfect apology, but a real one. She didn't excuse it. She didn't blame stress. She said she failed me as a friend. I cried reading that message, not because everything was fixed, but because it was the first time she acknowledged my pain without competing with it. We met in person a few days later. No coffee shop drama, no tears in public, just a quiet walk. We talked about everything and nothing. She admitted marriage had already forced her to confront parts of herself she didn't like. I admitted I had enabled her behavior for years because I valued harmony over honesty. Here's the part that might surprise people. We did not decide to be best friends again. We both agreed that too much damage had been done for things to snap back into place. We said we cared about each other, but we needed distance to figure out who we were outside of old roles. There was no yelling, no guilt trips, just acceptance. When we hugged goodbye, it felt like closing a book instead of ripping out pages. Since then, my life has continued moving forward. I've settled into my new job and I actually like it. My dad is stronger every time I talk to him. Charlie still has bad days, but he also has good ones, and I treasure those more than anything. I've also learned something uncomfortable about myself. I was so used to being the strong one that I didn't know how to demand care when I needed it. Losing that friendship forced me to build healthier ones. I now have people in my life who ask how I am and actually wait for the answer. I don't hate Lauren. I don't think she's a villain. I think she is a person who learned too late that love isn't measured by how much someone is willing to endure for you. Walking away from her wedding was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but walking away from the version of myself who thought suffering was the price of loyalty was even harder. I finally understand that choosing yourself doesn't always feel empowering in the moment. Sometimes it feels lonely and terrifying and full of doubt. But months later, when you look back and realize you survived, it also feels like freedom. Stories number 5. My sister thinks my bedroom should be hers for her honeymoon, and it has blown up my whole family. I never thought I would be the kind of person who needed to vent to strangers on the internet, but here I am, because I feel like I am losing my mind, and everyone around me is. Acting like I am some kind of villain. I am a 29-year-old woman living in the U.S. with my husband Ethan, who is 31, and we have been married for 4 years. We live in a modest 3-bedroom house that we bought 2 years ago after saving for a long time. 1 bedroom is ours, 1 is a small guest room that also doubles as my home office, and the 3rd is basically storage and a future nursery if things work out that way. My sister Lauren is 26, and she just got married to her boyfriend Mark, who is 28. Their wedding was last weekend, and it was beautiful expensive, and honestly kind of stressful for everyone involved. Lauren has always been the more dramatic one between us. Growing up, she was used to getting her way because she was the baby of the family, and my parents have always had a soft spot for her. I love her, but I am not blind to the fact that she can be entitled and emotional when things do not go exactly how she imagines them. After the wedding, they planned a short honeymoon because they could not afford a long trip right away. They decided to do a road trip through a few nearby states and then spend the last part of the week in our city because there is a big music festival happening that they both wanted to attend. Hotels were insanely expensive because of the festival, so a few months ago I offered that they could stay with us for 3 nights. At the time, it felt like a normal supportive sister thing to do, and I honestly did not think much about it beyond that. A few days before the wedding, Lauren called me and said she was so excited to stay at our place, and then she casually mentioned that she could not wait to sleep in our bedroom because it was the biggest and nicest. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She did not laugh back. She said she was serious and that it made sense for the newlyweds to have the main bedroom while Ethan and I could just use the guest room for a few nights. I told her no immediately. Not in a rude way, but very clearly. I said that was our personal space and I was not comfortable giving up our bedroom. I reminded her that the guest room has a queen bed and a private bathroom and it is perfectly nice. She got quiet and then said I was being selfish and that it was her honeymoon and I should want to do something special for her. That conversation ended awkwardly, but I thought it would blow over. It did not. The next day, my mom called me and asked why I was being difficult. She said Lauren was really hurt and crying and felt like I was not supporting her marriage. I explained my side, and my mom said that when family visits you make sacrifices, and that it was only for 3 nights. My dad texted me later saying maybe I could compromise to keep the peace. Ethan was fully on my side from the start. He said he was not comfortable with anyone sleeping in our bed, and that it was weird that Lauren even asked. He also pointed out that we already were doing them a favor by letting them stay for free during a busy weekend. Hearing him say that made me feel sane, but it also made me feel worse, because now it was not just me being stubborn, it was both of us holding a boundary and apparently upsetting my entire family. The pressure increased after the wedding. Lauren did not speak to me directly, but she posted vague things on social media about feeling unsupported by family and learning who really cares about you after you get married. A couple of relatives commented things like, "You deserve the best, and do not let anyone dim your joy." I felt sick reading it because I knew it was about me, even though she did not name me. The day after the wedding, she finally texted me. She said she could not believe I was ruining her honeymoon experience over a bedroom, and that she would never do this to me. She said as a married couple, they deserved privacy and comfort, and the guest room felt like being treated like visitors instead of family. I reminded her that they were literally visitors. I tried to keep my tone calm and respectful, but I also stood firm. I told her I loved her, but my answer was still no. That is when she escalated. She said if I really loved her, I would make this sacrifice, and that she had always looked up to me, and now she felt like I was choosing my comfort over her happiness. She brought up random things from childhood about how I always got more freedom because I was older, and how this was just another example of me putting myself first. It felt unfair and manipulative, and I started to cry because suddenly this stupid bedroom issue had turned into a referendum on our entire relationship. I called my mom again, hoping she could help de-escalate, but instead, she doubled down. She said Lauren was emotional, and I should be the bigger person. She said marriage is about compromise, and maybe this was a chance for me to show generosity. I asked her why Lauren could not compromise by using the guest room, and my mom said that was different because it was her honeymoon. At this point, I started questioning myself. I wondered if I was being unreasonable. It is just a room after all. But every time I imagined stripping our bed and moving our things and sleeping in the smaller room while my sister had sex in my bed, I felt deeply uncomfortable. It is not about jealousy or control. It is about personal space and boundaries. That bed is where Ethan and I sleep every night, where we talk, where we grieve, where we relax. I do not want that energy mixed with anyone else, even my sister. Ethan suggested we cancel the offer entirely and tell them to get a hotel or find another place to stay. He said if they were going to disrespect us in our own home, then maybe they should not stay at all. I felt torn because that would definitely cause a bigger blow up, and I did not want to permanently damage my relationship with Lauren or my parents. I tried one last time to explain myself to Lauren. I told her she was welcome in our home, we were excited to celebrate her marriage, but our bedroom was not up for discussion. I offered to make the guest room extra special with fresh flowers, nice sheets, and a little welcome basket. She replied that it was too late and that she already felt rejected. She said she would stay, but she would never forget how I treated her during such an important moment in her life. Now the visit is coming up in a few days, and I feel anxious in my own home. I am worried she will make passive-aggressive comments or sulk the entire time. I am worried my parents will hold this against me. I am worried that this has created a crack in our family that will not heal easily. At the same time, I am also angry because I feel like my boundaries are being trampled and I am being painted as a bad sister for simply saying no. I keep replaying everything in my head and wondering if there was a better way to handle it. I wonder if I should have never offered our place in the first place. I wonder if this is just who Lauren is and I have been ignoring it for years. I wonder if giving in would actually make things better or just teach her that she can guilt me into anything. I love my sister. I truly do. I was happy for her on her wedding day and I want her marriage to start on a positive note. But I also love my husband and my home, and I do not think protecting those things should make me the bad guy. I feel like I am being asked to sacrifice my comfort and sense of safety so that she can feel special, and that feels wrong, even if everyone else thinks it is normal. So here I am, sitting in my living room, staring at the closed door of my bedroom, feeling like it has become a symbol for everything unspoken in my family. I do not know if standing my ground will cost me my relationship with my sister or if giving in will cost me my self-respect. I just know that this whole situation has made what should have been a happy family moment into something heavy and exhausting, and I do not know what I should do next. Update: my sister thinks my bedroom should be hers for her honeymoon, and it has blown up my whole family. The visit finally happened, and I feel like I aged 5 years in 1 week. A lot of people told me that once they arrived, things would calm down and everyone would act normal. That did not really happen, but it also did not explode in the exact way I feared. It was more of a slow emotional drain that left me feeling exhausted and oddly clear about some things. Lauren and Mark arrived on a Thursday afternoon. When they pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped because I did not know what kind of mood she would be in. I hugged her and congratulated her again, and she hugged me back, but it felt stiff and performative. Mark was polite and thanked us for letting them stay, and he seemed genuinely grateful, which almost made things worse, because it highlighted how tense Lauren was being. I showed them the guest room, which I had put real effort into. Fresh sheets, flowers, candles, snacks, even a handwritten welcome card. Lauren looked around and said it was nice, but her tone was flat. She did not thank me. She just said okay and put her bag down. That was the moment I knew she was not planning to let this go quietly. The first night was awkward but manageable. We ordered takeout and talked about the wedding and the road trip. Lauren laughed at Mark's jokes and talked about the festival, but she barely looked at me. Whenever Ethan spoke, she was polite but distant. I went to bed, feeling like I was walking on eggshells in my own house. The second day was worse. My mom came over in the afternoon to drop something off, and immediately the tension shifted. Lauren suddenly became emotional and said she felt like a guest instead of family. My mom looked at me like I was the problem and said maybe it was not too late to reconsider the bedroom situation. Ethan stepped in and said calmly but firmly that this was no longer up for discussion. The room went silent. Lauren started crying and said she could not believe this was happening during her honeymoon. That turned into a full-blown argument. Lauren accused me of being cold and selfish. She said I had changed since getting married and that I cared more about my space than about her feelings. I finally snapped and told her that asking for our bedroom was inappropriate and that it hurt me that she kept pushing after I said no. I told her that staying in our home was a gift, not an obligation, and that she was acting entitled. My mom told us both to calm down, but then said something that stuck with me. She said she raised us to share, and that she was disappointed in how this turned out. I asked her why sharing only seemed to apply to me. She did not answer that. Mark surprised everyone by speaking up. He said he did not know the bedroom issue was this serious and that he was perfectly happy in the guest room. He said he felt uncomfortable being in the middle and that he did not want to cause problems between sisters. Lauren looked shocked and then angry. She accused him of not having her back. He said he loved her, but this was not worth tearing the family apart. After that, things shifted again. Lauren withdrew completely. She barely spoke to me for the rest of the visit. She and Mark spent most of their time out at the festival or in the guest room. I could feel her resentment, but it was quieter. Ethan and I kept our distance and tried to give them space. On the last morning before they left, Lauren finally spoke to me alone. She said she felt embarrassed that Mark took my side and that it made her feel small. She said she built up this idea of her honeymoon being perfect, and when things did not go how she imagined, she fixated on the bedroom as proof that she did not matter as much as she thought. She admitted she might have gone too far, but she also said she still felt hurt. I told her I was sorry she felt hurt, but I was not sorry for protecting my boundaries. I told her I loved her, but I needed her to respect my marriage and my home. We cried, but it did not feel like a neat resolution. It felt like two people finally being honest after days of pretending. After they left, my mom called me and said she wished things had gone differently, but she understood better now why I stood my ground. She did not fully apologize, but it was the closest I think I am going to get. Ethan told me he was proud of me for not giving in even when it was uncomfortable. Hearing that mattered more than I expected. Since then, Lauren and I have exchanged a few texts. They are polite and surface level. I do not know what our relationship will look like long term, but I do know something important changed for me. I realized that keeping the peace at my own expense is not actually peace. It is just silence that breeds resentment. I still feel sad about how everything went down. I wish my sister and I could have navigated this without so much pain. But I also feel lighter, knowing I did not betray myself or my marriage to make someone else temporarily happy. Our bedroom is still our bedroom. Our home still feels like ours. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I chose myself without guilt, even if it came at a cost. Stories number 6. My friends say I ruined our trip by making someone feel unwelcome, and I cannot tell if I was wrong. I am a 32-year-old woman, and this situation has been eating at me since we got back. I have been part of the same friend group since college. There are 6 of us who stayed close through jobs and marriages and kids and breakups. We do one big trip every year if schedules allow. This year, we rented a large house near a lake for a long weekend. The group included me, my husband Aaron, our friends Melissa and her wife Dana, our friend Chris, and our friend Julia. Everyone is in their early to mid-30s. We all live in different states now, but still talk regularly. The issue revolves around Julia and a man named Trevor. Julia has always been the spontaneous one. She dates a lot and sometimes brings new people around quickly. In the past, that has caused some awkward moments, but nothing major. When we planned the trip months ago, it was understood that it was just the core group and spouses. Chris is single and was fine coming alone. Julia was single at the time too. About a week before the trip, she told us she had started seeing someone new and asked if she could bring him. She said they were not serious, but she did not want to leave him behind for the weekend. There was some hesitation in the group chat, but no one outright said no. Melissa said she would prefer to keep it to people we know well. Julia replied that Trevor was chill and that we would barely notice him. I did not respond at all, which I now realize might matter. When we arrived at the house, Trevor was already there with Julia. She had driven separately and arrived earlier. He was friendly enough at first. He introduced himself and helped carry bags. I tried to be polite, but I immediately felt uncomfortable. Not because he did anything wrong in that moment, but because I did not like that a stranger was suddenly part of what I thought was a safe and familiar space. I know that sounds dramatic, but that is honestly how it felt to me. This trip is usually when we decompress and talk openly about our lives. I did not feel ready to do that around someone I had just met. The first night, we were all in the kitchen cooking dinner. Trevor started making jokes that landed wrong with me. Nothing offensive exactly, but a lot of sarcastic comments about marriage and about how people with kids seem exhausted all the time. Aaron and I have a toddler, and it felt pointed. I tried to brush it off. Later that night, when we were sitting by the fire, he started asking personal questions about our finances and why we chose to live where we do. It felt intrusive. I answered vaguely and changed the subject. Julia did not seem to notice, or maybe did not care. The next day, things escalated for me. We had planned a group hike in the morning. Trevor complained the entire time. He said the trail was boring and that he would rather be doing something more exciting. He kept walking ahead and then stopping to wait like we were holding him back. At one point, he said this trip felt like a couple's retreat with a pity invite. Chris looked uncomfortable. I finally said that no one forced him to come and that the plan had been clear. The mood shifted immediately. Julia snapped at me and said I was being rude. Trevor laughed it off, but things were tense after that. When we got back to the house, I pulled Julia aside. I told her that I was uncomfortable with some of Trevor's comments and that I felt like the dynamic of the trip had changed. I said I wished she had waited to bring him until we all knew him better. She got defensive and said I was being judgmental and cold. She said Trevor felt like I did not like him from the start and that my attitude made him feel unwelcome. I told her I was not trying to exclude him, but that this trip meant a lot to me and I did not feel heard when I expressed discomfort. That night, we split into smaller groups. I stayed inside with Melissa and Dana. Trevor and Julia went out to a bar. Chris and Aaron sat on the deck. The next morning, Melissa told me that Trevor had complained to Julia that I was hostile and that my comment on the hike embarrassed him. Julia apparently told him that I can be intense and protective of my space. Hearing that made me feel angry and misunderstood. I did not think setting a boundary was hostility. On the last day of the trip, we all tried to keep things civil. Trevor barely spoke to me. Julia was distant. On the drive home, my phone blew up with messages. Julia accused me of ruining the trip and making her feel like she had to choose between her friends and someone she likes. She said everyone noticed the tension and that it all traced back to me. Chris later texted me privately and said he understood why I was uncomfortable, but thought I could have handled it more quietly. Melissa said she wished Julia had respected the original plan, but also said confrontation always changes the vibe. Now, I am sitting with this feeling that maybe I should have just swallowed my discomfort for the sake of the group. At the same time, I keep thinking about how often women are expected to be polite at the expense of their own boundaries. I did not yell or insult Trevor. I spoke up once when I felt disrespected, and I had a private conversation with Julia. Somehow, that turned into me being labeled as the problem. I am also struggling with the idea that making someone feel unwelcome is automatically wrong. This was not a public space. It was a shared rental meant for a specific group. Does welcoming someone new mean ignoring your own feelings entirely? I do not want to be someone who excludes others unfairly. I also do not want to be the person who sacrifices their comfort to keep the peace. Julia and I have not spoken since the messages after the trip. I miss her, but I am also tired of feeling like I have to apologize for reacting honestly. I keep replaying everything and wondering if there was a softer way to say what I said, or if the outcome would have been the same no matter what. I do not know if I owe her an apology or if I need one from her. All I know is that what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend turned into a fracture in a friendship, and everyone seems to think it is my fault. Update. My friends say I ruined our trip by making someone feel unwelcome, and I cannot tell if I was wrong. It has been about a month since the trip, and things have slowly come to the surface instead of fading away like I hoped. A few days after I posted, I decided to step back and not react emotionally to the group messages anymore. I muted the chat and focused on my family and work. That distance helped me calm down enough to think clearly instead of replaying every moment on a loop. What surprised me was that the silence was broken not by Julia, but by Chris. Chris called me one evening after his kids were in bed. He told me he had been uncomfortable most of the trip and had not known how to say it at the time. He said Trevor's comments about the trip being a pity invite stuck with him and made him feel small. He also said Trevor had made a few remarks to him at the bar about how married people get boring and how friend groups like ours are doomed. Chris said he did not defend me in the moment because he hates conflict, but he wanted me to know I was not imagining things. Hearing that was validating, but also frustrating, because it confirmed that I had been the only one willing to speak up. A week later, Melissa reached out and asked if we could talk. We met for coffee. She admitted she wished she had been clearer in the group chat when Julia asked to bring Trevor. She said she felt pressure to be easygoing and did not want to seem controlling. She also told me that Dana felt uneasy around Trevor too, but did not say anything because she did not want to escalate the situation. Melissa said the group tends to let Julia take the lead to avoid drama, and that my reaction disrupted that pattern. That hit me hard because it made me realize I was being blamed less for what I said and more for saying anything at all. Eventually, Julia did contact me. She sent a long message saying she felt embarrassed and defensive because she had vouched for Trevor and then felt judged when things went badly. She said Trevor broke things off with her shortly after the trip and told her he felt unwelcome and criticized. She said she projected that anger onto me. I appreciated the honesty, but I also felt hurt that she let me take the fall for weeks while she sorted through her feelings. We talked on the phone a few days later. I told her calmly that I was not trying to control her choices or exclude people she cares about. I told her that bringing someone new into a long-standing group dynamic without full buy-in is risky, and that dismissing concerns only makes things worse. I also told her that when she framed my discomfort as hostility, it crossed a line for me. She listened more than she had before. She apologized for not checking in with the group properly and for implying that I was the sole problem. What stood out to me most was that Julia admitted she had ignored early red flags with Trevor because she wanted the relationship to work. She said my reaction forced her to confront things she was not ready to see yet. That does not make me responsible for her breakup, but it explains why my presence felt threatening to her at the time. It was easier to paint me as difficult than to question her choice. The group chat eventually resumed with a lighter tone. No one formally apologized to me except Julia, but the dynamic has shifted. There is now an unspoken understanding that trips need clearer boundaries and agreements. Melissa even suggested next year we stick to the original rule of no new partners on group trips. No one argued with that. I noticed that Julia did not either. I still feel sad that it took conflict for these things to be acknowledged. I also feel more confident in my instincts. I did not ruin the trip by being honest. The trip was strained because expectations were unclear and because one person's comfort was prioritized over everyone else's. Speaking up made me visible in a way that was uncomfortable for the group, but that does not mean it was wrong. Julia and I are not back to where we were before, and I am not sure we ever will be. We are cordial and we check in occasionally. I am okay with that. This situation taught me that peace, at any cost, is not real peace. It is just silence that benefits the loudest or most impulsive person. I would rather risk being seen as difficult than continue pretending everything is fine when it is not. Stories number 7. My nephew got fired, and somehow it is everyone's fault except his. I am a 41-year-old woman named Patricia, And I never thought I would be writing about workplace drama involving my own family, but here I am, because the situation has gotten so ridiculous that I genuinely need outside perspective to make sure I am not losing my mind. This is about my nephew Caleb, who is 23 and was recently fired from his first real adult job. And according to him and my sister, it is the fault of his boss, his coworkers, the company culture, the economy, and basically everyone on earth except Caleb himself. For context, my sister Melissa is 45, and she has always been extremely protective of Caleb. He is her oldest, and she raised him mostly on her own after her divorce from my ex-brother-in-law Steve. I love my sister and my nephew, but Melissa has a habit of explaining away Caleb's mistakes instead of letting him face consequences. If he got bad grades, it was because the teacher did not like him. If he quit a sport, it was because the coach was unfair. If he missed curfew, it was because the rules were unreasonable. This pattern has followed him into adulthood, whether she realizes it or not. Caleb graduated from college last year with a general business degree, and honestly, we were all proud of him because he struggled a lot academically. After graduation, he moved back in with Melissa and said he was applying everywhere, but months went by without any offers. Eventually, my husband Brian helped him get an interview at the manufacturing company where Brian works in management. It was an entry-level office role, not glamorous, but stable with benefits and room to grow. Caleb got the job, and everyone treated it like a huge win. Melissa posted about it on Facebook. Caleb talked about how this was just a stepping stone and how he would probably move up fast because he is good with people. Brian stuck his neck out for him, which is important to remember later. At first, things seemed fine. Caleb complained about having to wake up early and said the dress code was outdated, but nothing alarming. About a month in, he started venting more. He said his supervisor, a woman named Denise, was micromanaging him. He said his coworkers were cliquey. He said the work was boring and beneath him. Every complaint was met with reassurance from Melissa that once they saw his potential, things would change. Then little red flags started popping up. Caleb would show up late to family dinners and say work ran long, but then post Instagram stories of him at the gym or getting coffee with friends during what should have been work hours. He said the company was flexible. Brian quietly mentioned to me that the company was not flexible in that way, and that Caleb had already been spoken to about time tracking. I asked Caleb directly one night how things were going, and he launched into a rant about how Denise had it out for him, and how corporate environments reward ass kissing instead of real talent. He said he was being singled out because he questioned inefficient processes. That is the exact phrase he used. When I asked what that meant, he said he asked why they did things a certain way, and Denise did not like being challenged. Fast forward to last month, when Melissa called me in tears saying Caleb had been fired. According to her, he was blindsided. According to Caleb, he walked into work and was ambushed in a meeting with Denise in HR and let go without warning. According to him, the reasons were vague and unfair. He said they accused him of attendance issues, attitude problems, and failure to meet expectations. I was immediately skeptical because companies do not usually fire people without some kind of paper trail, especially when HR is involved. Brian was furious because this reflected badly on him and because he knew the internal policies. He later confirmed that Caleb had been written up twice and put on a performance improvement plan, which Caleb never mentioned to any of us. When Melissa confronted Caleb about that, he said the write-ups were exaggerated and that the performance plan was designed to push him out. He said Denise never liked him from day one and that HR just rubber-stamped whatever she wanted. Here's where it gets worse. Melissa started telling family members that the company was toxic and that Brian's workplace was hostile to young people. She implied that Brian may not have defended Caleb enough. This caused tension because Brian had literally helped Caleb get the job and had no authority over his department. At a family gathering last weekend, things came to a head. My parents were there, along with my brother Thomas and his wife Rachel. The topic came up, and Melissa went on a long rant about how companies exploit young workers and crush their creativity. Caleb sat there nodding and adding comments about how Denise was threatened by him. At one point, my father asked Caleb what he could have done differently. Caleb said nothing. He said he stood up for himself and refused to be treated like a child. My father gently suggested that sometimes entry-level jobs involve learning humility. Caleb rolled his eyes and said that mindset is why older generations get taken advantage of. I finally spoke up and said that maybe being late repeatedly and ignoring a performance plan was not the best strategy. The room went quiet. Melissa immediately jumped in and said I was being unsupportive and kicking Caleb when he was down. Caleb looked at me like I had betrayed him. I asked him directly if he ever acknowledged the feedback he was given. He said the feedback was biased. I asked if he ever adjusted his behavior to avoid conflict. He said he should not have to change who he is to make insecure managers comfortable. Brian then dropped the bomb and said he knew for a fact that Caleb had been warned multiple times because he had seen the documentation. Melissa accused Brian of siding with the company over family. Brian responded that he was siding with reality. Caleb stormed out. Melissa followed him. The rest of us sat there in stunned silence. Later that night, Melissa texted me saying she could not believe I embarrassed Caleb like that and that family should be a safe space. I responded that honesty is not an attack and that enabling him was not helping. Since then, Caleb has been posting vague things online about toxic workplaces and standing up for yourself. Melissa has been hinting that he might pursue legal action for wrongful termination, even though from everything I know, he has no case. Brian is now worried this could come back on him professionally, even though he did nothing wrong. What bothers me most is that Caleb does not seem sad or reflective. He seems angry and entitled. He talks about finding a better job where he will be appreciated, but has not actually applied anywhere yet. Melissa says he just needs time to heal. I love my nephew, but I am deeply concerned that if no one ever holds him accountable, he is going to repeat this pattern over and over and blame the world every time it does not bend to him. At the same time, I am being painted as the villain for not automatically taking his side. So I am sitting here, wondering if I crossed the line by speaking up, or if staying silent would have been worse. I am also wondering how far this is going to go if Melissa really pushes the legal angle and drags Brian into it indirectly. I never wanted to be part of this mess, but now that I am in it, I do not know the right way forward without burning bridges. Update: my nephew got fired and somehow it is everyone's fault except his. It has been a little over 3 weeks since everything blew up at that family gathering, and somehow the situation has only gotten more tense instead of cooling down. I kept hoping time would give everyone perspective, but instead it seems to have given Melissa and Caleb more confidence that they are right and everyone else is wrong. A few days after the argument, Melissa called me, and at first I thought she wanted to smooth things over. Instead, she launched straight into talking about a lawyer she had contacted. She said a friend of a friend told her Caleb might have a case for wrongful termination retaliation and hostile work environment. I asked on what basis, and she said Caleb was punished for speaking up and questioning management practices. When I asked if there was any evidence beyond his word, she got defensive and said victims rarely have perfect documentation. I told her as calmly as I could that pursuing legal action could have serious consequences, especially since Brian works at the same company. She accused me of trying to scare her into silence and said Brian should be more worried about doing the right thing than protecting his job. That comment made something snap in me. I told her Brian already did the right thing by helping Caleb get hired and that Caleb did not hold up his end of the deal. After that call, I spoke to Brian and he decided to proactively talk to HR. He disclosed that the fired employee was his nephew and that there was family tension, but that he had no involvement in Caleb's supervision. HR reassured him that everything regarding Caleb was well documented and by the book, and that Brian's job was not at risk. Even so, the stress has been eating at him, and I hate that my family drama is affecting his work life. Meanwhile, Caleb has not been quietly reflecting like Melissa keeps claiming. He has doubled down. He has been posting long threads on social media about standing up to corporate abuse and how older generations are jealous of young people with boundaries. He even posted a screenshot of his termination email with the company name blurred out and framed it like a badge of honor. Several of his friends commented cheering him on, which only fueled his confidence. What really worried me was when he announced at a family group chat that he was thinking of starting a podcast about toxic workplaces. My brother Thomas replied with a thumbs up emoji, which Melissa took as support. My parents stayed silent, which usually means they are uncomfortable but do not want to get involved. Last weekend, my parents invited everyone over again, hoping to reset things. It did not go as planned. Caleb arrived late and immediately started talking about how interviews are beneath him and how he is waiting for the right opportunity. My mother asked gently if he had applied anywhere yet. He said not seriously because he is being more intentional now. My father then asked how he planned to support himself in the meantime. Caleb said he was lucky to have a mom who believes in him. Melissa smiled proudly. I saw my father's face fall and it broke my heart a little. At one point, my mother asked if he had learned anything from being fired. Caleb laughed and said he learned that corporate loyalty is a scam. That was it. I told him that losing a job can still be a learning experience even if the company is flawed. I said patterns matter, and this was not the first time authority figures had supposedly been out to get him. Melissa stood up and said I was obsessed with tearing Caleb down. She said I clearly resent him and that I have always judged her parenting. That is not true, but I understand why she feels attacked. Emotions were high and old resentments came pouring out. My father finally spoke up and said something that surprised everyone. He said he loved Caleb, but he was worried. He said he had watched the same cycle play out since Caleb was a teenager and that it was not helping him become independent or resilient. He said sometimes support looks like letting someone be uncomfortable. Caleb accused my father of not understanding the modern world. Melissa accused my parents of taking sides. Caleb left again. Melissa followed. After that night, my parents called me privately and thanked me for saying what I did, even though it caused conflict. They admitted they had been worried for years, but did not know how to intervene without pushing Melissa away. Hearing that made me feel less alone, but also sad that it took this long for things to be said out loud. As of now, Melissa is still talking about legal action, but has not actually done anything. I suspect a lawyer already told her there is no case. Brian has decided to distance himself completely and no longer engage in any conversations about Caleb's employment. I have also pulled back. I am tired of being painted as the villain for stating obvious facts. What hurts the most is that I miss my nephew. I miss the version of him who was funny and curious and capable of growth. Right now, he seems stuck in this narrative where accountability equals oppression, and anyone who challenges him is an enemy. I do not know how this will end. Maybe Caleb will get another job and repeat the cycle. Maybe something will finally force him to reflect. All I know is that I cannot keep lighting myself on fire to protect someone from consequences they refuse to acknowledge. I still love my family, but I am learning that love does not mean agreeing with everything or staying silent when silence helps no one. Stories number 8. My mother-in-law refuses to use or acknowledge my baby's name. I never thought a name could become the biggest problem in my life. But here I am, exhausted, emotional, and questioning everything because of what my mother-in-law is doing. I gave birth to my daughter almost 6 months ago. Her name is Amelia Rose. I picked Amelia because I loved how it sounded strong but gentle at the same time. And Rose is after my grandmother who practically raised me. My husband, Brian, agreed to the name right away. He said it felt right, and that was one of the few things during my pregnancy that felt simple. Brian's mother, Sharon, hated it from the beginning. When we told her the name during my pregnancy, she smiled in that tight way people do when they are trying not to say something rude. Then she said, "Well, I guess it's your baby. I should have paid more attention to the tone she used when she said that. After Amelia was born, Sharon came to the hospital. She held her, smiled at her, took pictures, and then said, "Hello, little angel." I corrected her and said, "Her name is Amelia." Sharon laughed and said, "I know, I just like Angel better." At first, I thought it was just a nickname. Lots of grandparents use nicknames. But it didn't stop. Every time she talked about my daughter, she called her Angel. When she posted on Facebook, she wrote things like, "My sweet angel is here," without ever using her real name. I tried to be patient. I gently reminded her. I said things like, "Amelia did so good at her doctor appointment today," or "Amelia is starting to smile more." Sharon would respond with, "Angel is such a good baby. Brian told me not to make it a big deal. He said his mom has always used weird nicknames, but this didn't feel cute or loving. It felt like she was erasing the name I chose for my child." One day I finally asked her directly. I said, "Why won't you call her Amelia?" She looked at me like I was being dramatic and said, "I just don't like that name. It sounds old. Angel fits her better." I told her it wasn't about what fit her in Sharon's opinion. It was about what her parents named her. Sharon said, "Well, when Brian was born, I picked his name, and nobody told me what to do." I said, "And now Brian and I picked our daughter's name. That's how it works." She didn't answer me. She just picked up Amelia and said, "Come here, Angel," like I hadn't said anything at all. That night, I cried to Brian. I told him it felt disrespectful. I told him it felt like his mother was trying to control something that wasn't hers to control. Brian said he would talk to her. He did. I know he did, because Sharon called me the next day. She said, "I hear you have a problem with me loving my granddaughter." I said, "This isn't about love. It's about her name." She said, "I carried Brian for 9 months. I know what a real bond is. You'll understand when you've been a mother longer." I was still bleeding from childbirth when she said that to me. I had barely slept in weeks. And she was telling me I didn't understand motherhood yet. After that, things got worse. She started correcting other people. If someone else called my baby Amelia in front of her, Sharon would say, "I call her Angel." Not even as a joke, like she was proud of it. My sister-in-law, Megan, told her once, "Mom, her name is Amelia." Sharon replied, "Well, I don't like it. I felt invisible." I started correcting her every single time, calmly, firmly, every time. "Her name is Amelia." Sharon would roll her eyes or sigh like I was being annoying. One time, at a family dinner, she said, "Angel wants more mashed potatoes." I said, "Amelia wants more mashed potatoes." Sharon looked straight at me and said, "Angel." Louder. I picked up my baby and said, "We're leaving." Brian followed me, shocked. In the car, I told him I was done being disrespected in front of my own child. Brian was upset, but he agreed it had gone too far. He told Sharon that if she couldn't use Amelia's name, we would stop bringing her over. Sharon cried. She told everyone in the family that I was controlling, that I was keeping her grandchild away, that I was too sensitive. Some of Brian's relatives started acting weird around me. His aunt, Carol, said, "You know how Sharon is. Just let her be." I said, "Why does everyone expect me to let her disrespect me?" Now Sharon only uses the name Angel in front of other people and avoids saying any name at all when I am around. She will say things like, "The baby is hungry," or "Bring me the baby," without saying her name. It feels childish and deliberate. What hurts the most is that this is my daughter. I grew her. I labored for her. I chose her name with love. And someone else thinks they get to override that just because they are older. Brian tries to support me, but I can tell he is tired of the tension. He wants peace. I want respect. I worry about the future. What happens when Amelia is old enough to know her own name and hears her grandmother refuse to say it? What happens when she asks me why grandma calls her something else? I don't want to raise my child in a family where her mother is constantly being undermined. I never wanted a fight. I just wanted my baby to be called by the name I gave her. Right now, It feels like such a small thing on the surface, but underneath it is about control, boundaries, and whether I am allowed to be the mother of my own child without being challenged at every step. I am tired, I am hurt, and I am angry that something as beautiful as my daughter's name has turned into a constant battle. Update: my mother-in-law refuses to use or acknowledge my baby's name. Things didn't calm down after I wrote before. They actually got messier. After Brian told Sharon we wouldn't come around if she refused to use Amelia's name, she went quiet for about 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, no Facebook posts about the baby. At first I thought maybe she was finally thinking about what she had done. I hoped she would come back and apologize. Instead, she came back angry. She invited us over for dinner and said she wanted to clear the air. I was nervous, but I agreed because I didn't want my daughter growing up with this weird cold war in the family. The first 5 minutes were fine. She hugged Brian, barely touched me, and then reached for my baby and said, "Come to Grandma, Angel." I froze. Brian said, "Mom." She sighed dramatically and said, "I slipped." I said, "You didn't slip. You chose to say it." She rolled her eyes and said, "Here we go again." I told her calmly that this wasn't a joke to me. I told her that every time she refused to use my daughter's name, it felt like she was telling me I didn't matter as her mother. She said, "You're making this about you. This is about my bond with my granddaughter." I said, "Then respect her name." She said, "I don't like it." Brian finally snapped and said, "Mom, that doesn't matter." She started crying and said everyone was attacking her in her own house. She said I had turned Brian against her. She said she felt replaced. That was the first time I realized this wasn't really about the name. It was about control and fear and not wanting to let go of her role as the most important woman in Brian's life. Dinner ended early. After that, Sharon went to other family members again. Brian's Aunt Carol texted me and said I should apologize just to keep peace. His cousin Lisa said Sharon was heartbroken and didn't understand why I was being so harsh. I asked Brian, "Why am I always the one expected to bend?" He didn't have an answer. A few days later, something happened that changed everything for me. We were at a family birthday party for Brian's nephew. There were a lot of people there, including kids. One of them asked me, "What's your baby's name?" Before I could answer, Sharon said, "Angel." I said, "Her name is Amelia." The kid looked confused and said, "Which one is it?" Sharon laughed and said, "Grandma calls her Angel." Then the kid looked at my baby and said, "What's your name?" She's too young to answer, but I felt my throat close up. That moment made everything real. This wasn't just annoying anymore. This was going to confuse my child and teach her that her mother's words don't matter. I picked up Amelia and said to Sharon, in front of everyone, "This stops now." The room went quiet. I said, "Her name is Amelia. You didn't give birth to her. You didn't name her. You don't get to rename her because you don't like my choice?" Sharon stared at me like I had slapped her. She said, "I've never been spoken to like that in my life." I said, "Then, maybe you should think about how you've been speaking to me." We left. That night, Brian and I had a long talk. He admitted he had been trying to keep everyone happy instead of doing what was right. He said he was scared of losing his mom, but also scared of losing me. I told him he was already losing me a little every time he stayed quiet. The next day, Brian went to his mom's house alone. He told her that if she wanted to be part of Amelia's life, she would use her real name. He told her this was not a debate anymore. Sharon didn't take it well. She said she felt disrespected. She said she felt like I had taken her son away. She said she would never apologize to me. Brian told her then she wouldn't see Amelia until she could respect both of us. We didn't see Sharon for over a month after that. It was hard. I won't lie. Even though she hurt me, I didn't want to be the reason my daughter didn't know her grandmother. But I also knew I couldn't keep letting myself be stepped on. One day, Sharon finally called Brian. She said she wanted to see the baby. Brian said, "Will you call her Amelia?" There was a long pause, And then she said, "I'll try." That was the best we were going to get. We went over the next weekend. I was tense the whole time. Sharon held Amelia and said, very stiffly, "Hello, Amelia." It sounded forced, like she was tasting a word she didn't like. But she kept saying it. Not every time, and sometimes she would pause, like she almost said angel, but she corrected herself. I didn't feel happy. I felt cautious. Later that night, she told Brian she still hated the name, but she would use it because she didn't want to lose him or her granddaughter. She never said sorry to me. I don't think she ever will. Things are better on the surface now. She mostly uses Amelia's name. But the relationship between her and me is different. It's polite, but not warm. I've learned something through all of this. Boundaries aren't about being cruel. They're about protecting what matters. My daughter matters. My role as her mother matters. I don't feel guilty anymore for standing up for myself and my child. If someone can't respect something as basic as her name, then they don't get unlimited access to her life. Amelia will grow up knowing her name, hearing it spoken with love by the people who truly respect her. And if her grandmother wants to be one of those people, she knows exactly what she has to do. Stories number 9. My husband asked me to stop wearing earrings because he says they make a woman look older, and I said no immediately. I never thought something as small as earrings would make me question my marriage, but here I am laying everything out because I genuinely don't know if I overreacted or if this is a sign of something much bigger. I am a 34-year-old woman, and I have been married to my husband Daniel for 6 years. We met in our mid-20s, dated for 4 years, and overall our relationship has been stable. Not perfect, but stable. We both work full-time, we don't have kids yet, and we've always considered ourselves pretty modern and respectful toward each other. That's why this situation caught me so off guard. I've always worn earrings. Not huge ones or flashy ones all the time, but they've been part of how I present myself since I was a teenager. Studs, small hoops, sometimes dangling earrings if I'm dressing up. My mom gave me my first pair when I was 16, and I've associated them with feeling put together and confident. Daniel has never commented on them negatively before. He's complimented me plenty over the years. He's never been controlling about my clothes or appearance, which is why what happened last week felt so strange and unsettling. We were getting ready to go to dinner with some friends. I was in the bathroom putting on a simple pair of silver hoop earrings. Nothing dramatic. Daniel was standing in the doorway watching me, which isn't unusual. Then he casually said something that made my stomach drop. He said I should consider stopping wearing earrings because they make a woman look older. I laughed at first because I genuinely thought he was joking. I even asked him what he meant. He didn't laugh back. He doubled down. He said that earrings draw attention to wrinkles and sagging, and that women who wear them too often end up looking matronly. He said I didn't need them anymore, and that I look younger without them. I stared at him in the mirror, waiting for him to say he was kidding. He didn't. I felt a mix of confusion and anger. I asked him why he was suddenly analyzing my age and appearance like that. He shrugged and said he was just being honest and trying to help me. He said men notice these things even if women don't. That's when I immediately said no. I told him I wasn't going to stop wearing earrings and that it was a weird thing to ask. I didn't yell, but I was firm. I told him my appearance was not up for negotiation. He looked surprised and then annoyed. He said I didn't have to be so defensive and that he was just making a suggestion. I told him it didn't feel like a suggestion. It felt like a judgment. The rest of the night was awkward. At dinner, he barely talked to me. When we got home, I asked him why this mattered so much to him. That's when the conversation got worse. He admitted that he's been feeling uncomfortable with how I'm aging. Those were his exact words. He said I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore either, and that little things like earrings emphasize it. He said he wants me to look fresh and youthful. Hearing that from my own husband felt like a punch to the chest. I asked him if he realized how hurtful that sounded. He said I was taking it personally when it wasn't meant that way. I told him it is personal. It's my face, my body, my aging process. I told him I don't exist to look young for him. He said marriage is about compromise and that I should be open to feedback. That's when I lost my patience. I told him compromising doesn't mean changing my appearance to suit his insecurities about aging. I told him earrings don't magically make someone look old, and that this sounded like something he pulled out of nowhere. He accused me of shutting him down and refusing to listen. I accused him of projecting his own fear of aging onto me. The argument spiraled until we both went to bed angry. The next day, he acted like nothing happened. He kissed me goodbye and told me to have a good day. I didn't bring it up because I needed time to think. Since then, I've been replaying the conversation over and over. The earrings themselves aren't the issue. It's the fact that he felt comfortable telling me to stop wearing something I love because it doesn't fit his idea of youth. It's also the way he framed it, not as a preference, but as advice. Like I should be grateful he's pointing out my flaws before others notice them. I started paying attention to other comments he's made over the past year. Small things I brushed off before. Comments about how women our age need to try harder. Comments about celebrities who look good for their age versus those who let themselves go. Jokes about gray hair. None of it seemed directed at me until now. I talked to my sister Megan about it. She immediately said it was a red flag and asked if he's controlling in other ways. I said no, but now I'm not as sure. Control doesn't always show up as rules and demands. Sometimes it shows up as suggestions that make you feel smaller. I also talked to a coworker, Allison, who's divorced. She said the issue isn't the earrings, it's the entitlement. She said once a partner starts believing they get a say in how you age, things can get ugly fast. Daniel brought it up again 2 days later. He said he felt dismissed and that I didn't respect his opinion. I told him his opinion crossed a line. He said marriage means being honest even when it's uncomfortable. I asked him if he would stop doing something he likes if I told him it made him look old. He laughed and said that's different. I asked him how. He didn't answer. Right now, we're in a weird Cold War. He hasn't apologized. I haven't backed down. I'm still wearing my earrings. Every time I put them on, I feel defiant and sad at the same time. I don't know if this is something we can talk through, or if it's revealing a deeper issue about how he sees me as I age. I don't know if my immediate no makes me unreasonable, or if it's the only response that protects my sense of self. All I know is that I never thought I'd feel disjudged in my own marriage over something so small. And that makes me wonder what happens when the changes aren't just earrings, but things neither of us can control. Update. My husband asked me to stop wearing earrings because he says they make a woman look older, and I said no immediately. A lot has happened since I first wrote this, and I want to be clear that I didn't expect the situation to escalate the way it did. I honestly thought it would be an uncomfortable conversation that eventually faded away. Instead, it forced me to look at parts of my marriage I had been avoiding for a long time. A few days after the argument, Daniel brought it up again. This time, his tone was calmer, almost rehearsed. He said he had been thinking, and that he felt like I attacked him instead of hearing him out. He said he wasn't trying to control me, just trying to help me stay attractive as we get older. Hearing him phrase it that way made my stomach twist. I asked him directly if he was afraid of me aging. He didn't deny it. He said attraction matters in marriage and that it scares him to think things will change too much. I told him that things are supposed to change, that we will both age, gain wrinkles, lose firmness, and look different. I asked him if he expects me to fight time forever just to make him comfortable. He got quiet and then said something that honestly shocked me. He said he assumed I would want to try harder because women are judged more harshly for aging than men. He said that's just how the world works. I told him that's exactly the problem. I told him I refuse to live my life trying to protect him from the reality that I am a human being who will age. I told him my earrings were never the issue. They were just the first thing he felt safe enough to criticize. That's when the conversation turned into something much bigger. He admitted he's been feeling insecure lately. A younger guy at his work got promoted. His hair is thinning. He's gained weight. He said seeing me age alongside him makes him panic because it reminds him of his own mortality. Instead of dealing with that, he focused on me. I appreciated the honesty, but it didn't excuse how he treated me. I told him that projecting his fear onto my body was unfair and damaging. I told him I need to feel safe and respected, not evaluated. We decided to take a few days apart emotionally. Not physically separate, but we stopped pretending everything was fine. The silence was heavy, but it gave me clarity. During that time, I noticed how often I had made myself smaller in our marriage, how often I brushed off comments to keep the peace, how often I chose comfort over confrontation. Daniel eventually apologized. A real apology. He said he was wrong to comment on my appearance that way. He said he didn't realize how entitled he sounded. He promised he would never ask me to change my appearance again. I accepted the apology, but I told him trust doesn't reset instantly. I told him I need to see real change, not just words. We started couples counseling last week. In our first session, the therapist asked us what we feared most about getting older. Daniel talked about losing relevance and attractiveness. I talked about losing autonomy and being reduced to how I look. That moment made it clear how differently we experience aging, and how important it is that my partner doesn't become another voice telling me I'm not enough. I'm still wearing my earrings, not to make a point, but because they're part of me. Daniel hasn't commented on them since. Sometimes I catch him looking at me like he's recalibrating how he sees me. I don't know yet what the long-term outcome will be. I know this didn't end our marriage, but it did change it. The illusion that love automatically protects you from objectification is gone. What I do know is that saying no immediately was the right choice. It stopped something unhealthy before it could grow roots. It forced a conversation we should have had years ago. Aging is inevitable. Disrespect is not. And I will never apologize for choosing myself over someone else's comfort with time. Update: my husband asked me to stop wearing earrings because he says they make a woman look older, and I said no immediately. This will probably be the last time I write about this because I finally feel like I'm standing on solid ground again. Whether that ground leads forward together or in. Separate directions. Counseling continued for several weeks after my last update, and it became very clear very quickly that the earrings were only the surface issue. In one session, our therapist asked Daniel when he first started worrying about my appearance. He hesitated and then admitted it wasn't just about me. It started when his mother made a comment at a family gathering about how women hit a wall faster than men. He laughed it off at the time, but the idea stuck. Hearing that made me angry in a quiet, tired way. Not because his mother said something ignorant, but because he let it shape how he saw me instead of questioning it. I told him that the moment he internalized that message and applied it to me, he stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as something with an expiration date. That hit him hard. Over the next sessions, Daniel started unpacking how much of his self-worth is tied to appearances and external validation. He admitted he has always believed love is conditional, something you maintain by staying desirable. He said he didn't realize how deeply that belief affected the way he treated me. I told him something I had never said out loud before. I told him that when he asked me to stop wearing earrings, I felt like he was asking me to erase a piece of myself to make him feel less afraid. I told him that scared me more than the comment itself. There was a long silence after that. Then he said he understood why that moment changed how I saw him. We didn't magically fix everything. There were uncomfortable conversations and moments where I questioned whether we were fundamentally incompatible. But there was also effort. Real effort. He stopped making casual comments about women's appearances entirely. When he caught himself thinking something judgmental, he brought it up in therapy instead of directing it at me. One night, a few weeks ago, he surprised me in a way I didn't expect. We were getting ready for dinner, and I put on a pair of earrings my grandmother gave me years ago. He looked at me and said they reminded him of how confident I am and how much he admires that about me. He didn't mention age. He didn't frame it as attraction. He just saw me. I cried in the bathroom after that. Not because everything was perfect, but because I felt seen again. Here's the part that matters most. I told Daniel that even though we are staying together, I will never again tolerate being evaluated instead of loved. I told him if that line is crossed, I will leave without debating whether I'm being dramatic. He accepted that. Fully. Without arguing. This experience changed me too. I don't excuse comments anymore. I don't laugh things off that make me uncomfortable. I don't soften my boundaries to keep someone else comfortable. Saying no that first night taught me that my autonomy is non-negotiable. I still wear earrings almost every day. Sometimes bold ones. Sometimes simple studs. They no longer feel like a symbol of defiance. They just feel like me. I don't know what the future holds. I do know that love cannot exist where control and fear are allowed to grow unchecked. Whether my marriage lasts another year or another lifetime, I will never again shrink myself to fit someone else's idea of youth. Stories number 10. My boyfriend will not let me have anyone over, and I am starting to wonder if this is my future. I am a 25-year-old woman, and I have been with my boyfriend Daniel for a little over 3 years. We live in the US and moved in together about a year ago. On paper, our relationship looks good. We rarely yell, we split bills evenly, we talk about marriage someday, and from the outside it probably looks stable and mature. But there is one issue that has slowly grown into something that now feels impossible to ignore, and it is making me question everything. Daniel is 26, and he absolutely hates having people over. When I say hates, I do not mean he prefers quiet or gets socially drained. I mean, he has a hard rule that no one is allowed in our apartment unless it is a repair person or his parents visiting briefly once or twice a year. Friends, coworkers, my family, all are off limits. At first I thought this was temporary or something we could work through. Now I am scared this is just how my life is going to be if I stay. When we first started dating, we both lived with roommates, so this was never really an issue. We went to other people's places or went out. Daniel always preferred staying in, and I thought he was just more introverted than me. I am not a party person, but I do like having a friend over to watch a movie or my sister over for dinner sometimes. When we talked about moving in together, I assumed that meant creating a shared home where both of us could exist comfortably. The first red flag happened a few months after we moved in. My best friend Ashley wanted to stop by to see the apartment. She lives about an hour away, and we had not seen each other in a while. I told Daniel a few days in advance, and he immediately got tense. He asked how long she would stay, what we would do, and if she could just meet me somewhere else instead. I told him she would probably stay an hour or two, and that I wanted to show her our place. He said he was not comfortable with people in his space. I remember feeling confused. I asked him what he meant because it was my space too. He said he knew that, but it still made him anxious, and he felt like he could not relax when other people were around. I suggested he could go into the bedroom or put on headphones. He said that was not the same, and that he would still feel on edge knowing someone was in the apartment. To keep the peace, I told Ashley we would meet for coffee instead. I did not make a big deal of it, but I felt a small sting of disappointment. I told myself relationships are about compromise, and this was not a huge sacrifice. Except, it kept happening. Every time I mentioned having someone over, even my older sister Megan, who lives nearby, Daniel shut it down. Sometimes he would say maybe another time, sometimes he would say absolutely not. He started framing it as a boundary and said I needed to respect it. I asked if we could come up with rules like certain days or a time limit. He said no because the problem was people being in the apartment at all. We argued about it for the first time about 6 months in. I told him I was starting to feel isolated. I work from home, and most of my social life involves casual hangouts. He told me I could go to other people's places or go out. I asked why it was okay for me to be inconvenienced every time, but not for him to feel a little uncomfortable occasionally. He said discomfort for him felt overwhelming and that I was minimizing his feelings. That word stuck with me. Minimizing. I did not want to be that person, so I backed off again. I started going to my sister's place more often. I met friends at restaurants instead of inviting them over, but slowly I realized something else was happening. People stopped suggesting coming over. They stopped asking about our place. My home stopped feeling like a place I could share with anyone. The situation really came to a head last month. My mom was going through a rough time emotionally and wanted to come over and cook dinner with me like we used to do when I lived alone. I asked Daniel if she could come over for a couple of hours. I explained why it mattered to me. He said no without hesitation. He said family counted as people and people were not allowed. I lost it. I cried and told him I felt like a guest in my own home. I told him I felt like I was shrinking my life to fit his comfort. He told me I was being dramatic and that plenty of couples do not host people. He said I knew how he was before we moved in together. That hurt because I did not. I knew he was introverted, not that he had a zero guest policy. He said he assumed I would be fine with it because I loved him and because it was his boundary. I asked him what about my boundaries. He said his anxiety was not negotiable. Since then, I have been stuck in my head. I keep asking myself if this is something I am supposed to accept forever. If we get married, does that mean no one ever comes over? No friends dropping by? No family dinners? No kids' birthday parties if we have children someday? The idea makes my chest feel tight. I tried to talk to him again calmly. I asked if he would consider therapy or even talking to someone about why this feels so intense for him. He got defensive and said I was trying to fix him. He said not everything needs to be pathologized. He told me if I push this, it will create resentment. The irony of that statement almost made me laugh, because I am already feeling resentful. I do not want to be. I love Daniel in so many ways. He is loyal, thoughtful, and supportive in other areas. But this feels big. It feels like more than just a preference. It feels like control, even if he does not mean it that way. I have started to notice how I censor myself now, how I hesitate before making plans, how I explain to people that our place is not really a hangout spot without giving details. I feel embarrassed sometimes. I feel like I am hiding something. I asked myself what would happen if I just invited someone over anyway. The answer scared me because I knew it would turn into a huge fight and possibly the end of the relationship. That made me realize how much power this one rule has over my life. I do not know if compromise always means one person giving up something important. I do not know if love is supposed to feel this restrictive. I keep going back and forth between telling myself I am overreacting and feeling like I am slowly disappearing. I am not asking him to host parties. I am asking for occasional connection in my own home. I am asking for space that feels shared instead of borrowed. And I do not know if wanting that makes me incompatible with him or if leaving over this would be an overreaction. Right now I am sitting on my couch, writing this while he is in the bedroom with the door closed like usual. The apartment is quiet and tidy and controlled. And I cannot stop wondering if this quiet is going to be the soundtrack of my life if I stay. Update, my boyfriend will not let me have anyone over, and I am starting to wonder if this is my future. A lot has happened since I first wrote this, and I feel like I finally have enough distance to put everything into words. The short version is that nothing magically fixed itself, but I learned a lot about my relationship and about myself in a way I probably would not have if this issue had stayed quiet. After I wrote the original post, I sat with my feelings for a few days. I noticed how tense I felt in my own apartment, and how often I waited for Daniel's mood before making any kind of plan. That realization alone was heavy. I decided I needed one last serious conversation where I was completely honest, even if it led somewhere painful. I asked Daniel to sit down with me one evening after dinner. I told him this was important and not an argument. I explained that the no guest rule was no longer something I could quietly live with. I told him I felt isolated, embarrassed, and small. I told him I was starting to imagine a future that scared me and that this issue was making me question whether we were compatible long term. He listened quietly at first, which gave me some hope. Then, he said he felt blindsided and accused me of making him the bad guy. He said he never told me I could not have a social life, just that he did not want it in the apartment. I told him that, practically speaking, it meant the same thing, because my home is a huge part of my life. I asked him directly if he could imagine ever being okay with occasional guests, even something limited like once a month, or just family. He said no. He said he has felt this way his entire life, and that the apartment is the only place he feels fully safe and in control. He admitted that even thinking about someone else being there makes his heart race and his skin crawl. That was the first time he described it that intensely. I asked again about therapy, not as a way to fix him, but as a way to understand himself better. He said he did not want to dig into it, and that he was functioning fine the way he is. He said if I needed more social interaction than he could provide, then maybe I was asking too much. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. It made me realize that in his mind, the solution was always me adjusting, never him. There was no shared problem, only my dissatisfaction. A few days later, something small but symbolic happened. My sister Megan asked if she could drop something off and come in for a few minutes. I hesitated before answering her text, and that hesitation made me angry. I realized I was afraid of my own boyfriend's reaction to a normal interaction. I told Daniel she was coming by for 10 minutes, whether he liked it or not. He panicked. He said I was violating his boundary and that I was being disrespectful. He went into the bedroom and shut the door. Megan came in, gave me a hug, and immediately sensed something was off. I felt embarrassed and shaky the entire time, even though we did nothing wrong. After she left, Daniel came out and said he felt betrayed. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about how a 10-minute visit caused that much distress and conflict. I imagined holidays, emergencies, future children, and even just needing support on a bad day. I realized I could not build a life around constantly avoiding someone else's triggers when they refused to address them. The next morning, I told him I needed space to think. I stayed with Megan for a few days. Being in her house, surrounded by noise and casual conversation, felt like breathing again. It made the contrast impossible to ignore. When I went back to talk to Daniel, I told him I loved him, but I could not live like this. I told him I respected his feelings, but his refusal to compromise or seek help meant I was always going to come second to his comfort. I told him that was not the kind of partnership I wanted. He was devastated and angry. He said I was abandoning him over something trivial. He said if I really loved him, I would accept him as he is. I told him love does not mean erasing yourself. I told him this was not trivial to me, and that I had already given up more than I realized. We broke up that day. It has been a few weeks now. I moved out and am temporarily staying with my sister while I look for my own place. It has been emotional and messy and sad. I miss parts of him. I miss the familiarity and the good moments. But I also feel lighter in a way I did not expect. Friends have come over. My mom cooked with me again. People sit on the couch and talk and laugh, and it feels normal and warm and alive. I did not realize how much I had been grieving that part of myself until I got it back. I do not think Daniel is a bad person. I think he has deep issues around control and safety that he is not ready to face. But I also know now that loving someone does not mean shrinking your world to fit inside their fears. This experience taught me that compatibility is not just about love or effort. It is about whether two people can build a shared life without one person disappearing in the process. And as painful as this ending has been, I finally feel like I chose myself before I lost myself completely. Update: my boyfriend will not let me have anyone over, and I am starting to wonder if this is my future. It has been several months since the breakup, and I wanted to come back and write one last time, because the dust has finally settled enough for me to see everything clearly. When I first left Daniel, I was running on adrenaline and relief mixed with grief. Now things are quieter and steadier, and I can finally reflect without feeling like I am constantly bracing myself. I ended up getting my own small one-bedroom apartment not far from my sister. The first night I slept there alone, I cried. Not because I regretted leaving, but because it hit me how much of myself I had put on pause for 3 years. The silence felt different. It was my silence, not something imposed on me. That distinction mattered more than I realized. The first weekend after I moved in, I invited Ashley over. We sat on the floor eating takeout because I did not even have furniture yet. I remember laughing and then suddenly crying at the same time because something that simple had felt forbidden for so long. Ashley told me she had always felt like I was disappearing a little when I lived with Daniel, but she did not know how to bring it up. Hearing that hurt, but it also confirmed that I was not imagining things. Daniel reached out a few times after the breakup. At first, his messages were emotional and apologetic. He said he missed me and that the apartment felt empty without me. He said he did not realize how serious the issue was until I left. For a moment, I wondered if things could be different now. I asked him if he had thought more about therapy or compromise. He said he had been reading about boundaries and still believed his were valid. That was the moment I knew nothing had actually changed. Eventually, his messages shifted. He said I gave up too easily. He said relationships require sacrifice and that I should have been more patient. I did not argue. I simply told him I hoped he found someone who felt fulfilled in the life he wanted. After that, we stopped talking. What surprised me the most was how my body responded to freedom. I stopped feeling on edge all the time. I stopped over-explaining myself. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head before they happened. I did not realize how much anxiety I had been carrying until it was gone. My relationship with my family has gotten stronger too. My mom told me she was proud of me for leaving even though it was hard. She admitted she worried about how isolated I had become. Hearing that brought a lot of closure. I have started dating again slowly and casually. Nothing serious yet, but one thing I noticed immediately is how aware I am now of how I feel in someone's presence. I pay attention to whether I am expanding or shrinking. I did not know that was something I was allowed to notice before. Looking back, I do not think Daniel was intentionally controlling. But intent does not erase impact. His anxiety became the center of our shared life, and my needs were always treated as optional. I learned that boundaries are not meant to silence someone else's humanity. They are meant to protect yourself without erasing another person. If I could go back and talk to the version of myself who first felt that sting of disappointment canceling a simple visit, I would tell her to trust that feeling. Discomfort that asks you to disappear is not love. Compromise that only goes one direction is not compromise. My apartment is not fancy. Sometimes it is messy. Sometimes it is loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Stories number 11. My friend planned a surprise brunch for my birthday and then charged me for my meal, and I still feel weird about it. I am a 28-year-old woman, and this happened a few weeks ago, but it is still bothering me more than I expected. I am not someone who makes a huge deal out of my birthday. I usually do something low-key like dinner with a couple friends or just spend the day with my partner. This year, I did not plan anything at all. I took the day off work and assumed it would be quiet. That is part of why this situation caught me so off guard. One of my closest friends is a woman named Rachel, who is 29. We have been friends since our early 20s, and she is the kind of person who loves planning things and doing surprises. She has always been more social and more organized than I am. A few days before my birthday, she texted me and said she wanted to grab coffee that Sunday and catch up. I did not think anything of it and said sure. On the morning of my birthday, Rachel told me to meet her at a cafe downtown. When I walked in, I immediately realized something was up. There were about 8 people there, including friends from different parts of my life. Some were coworkers and some were college friends. A couple of them I had not seen in over a year. Everyone yelled surprise and clapped, and I was honestly touched. I felt a little overwhelmed, but in a good way. I remember thinking that this was really thoughtful of her, and that I was lucky to have friends who cared enough to do this. We all sat down and ordered brunch. The place was not cheap, but it was not outrageous either. Think trendy brunch spot with cocktails and fancy lattes. Rachel kept saying not to worry about anything and to just enjoy myself. She said this day was about me and that she wanted to make it special. I thanked her multiple times and told her how much it meant to me. I ordered a normal meal and one drink, nothing extravagant. The whole brunch lasted about 2 hours and it was genuinely nice. At the end of the meal, the server brought the check. Rachel grabbed it and said she would take care of it. A couple of people offered to Venmo her and she waved them off and said she had it covered. I did not question it because I assumed she wanted to treat me for my birthday and maybe everyone else would settle up later. I did not ask because I did not want to make it awkward in front of everyone. Later that evening after I got home, I got a Venmo notification from Rachel. It was a request for my portion of the brunch, including tax and tip. I stared at my phone for a long time. I honestly thought it had to be a mistake. I double-checked the amount, and it was exactly what my meal would have cost. I felt my stomach drop. It was not about the money itself. I could afford it. It was the principle and the confusion. I waited a bit before responding because I did not want to react emotionally. I texted her and said, "Hey, I just got this request and wanted to check if it was meant for me." She replied almost immediately and said yes, she just split the bill evenly and sent everyone their share. She said she assumed that was fine. I asked her why she said not to worry about it earlier. She said she meant not to worry in the moment and that she thought everyone understood it was not her treating everyone. I told her I was surprised because it was my birthday and the brunch was her idea and a surprise. I said it made me feel awkward to be charged afterward. She responded that she had put a lot of effort into planning it and coordinating schedules and that she did not think it was fair for her to pay for everyone, including me. She said that surprises do not automatically mean free. That line stuck with me in a bad way. I paid her because I did not want to escalate things or look ungrateful. After that, the tone between us shifted. She became colder in her messages, and I felt like I had done something wrong by even questioning it. I talked to my partner named Alex, and he said it was strange to charge someone for their own birthday meal when they did not ask for the event. He said if you plan a surprise, you should be clear up front if people are expected to pay. That made me feel less crazy, but still conflicted. I also talked to another friend who attended the brunch named Emily. She told me that Rachel had messaged the group beforehand, asking if everyone was okay paying for themselves, and no one objected. Emily assumed that Rachel would cover my meal since it was my birthday, but said it was never explicitly stated. Hearing that made things even murkier. It seems like everyone had a slightly different assumption, and I was the only one left out of the conversation entirely. What bothers me most is that I did not consent to the plan. I did not ask for a brunch or a group event. I would have been happy with coffee or nothing at all. If Rachel had asked me beforehand, I might have chosen a cheaper place or suggested splitting in a different way. Being surprised and then billed later felt uncomfortable. It made the whole gesture feel transactional instead of celebratory. At the same time, I feel guilty for feeling upset because she did put in effort. She coordinated multiple people and picked a place and made reservations. I can acknowledge that work without thinking she handled the money part well. I also cannot shake the feeling that if the roles were reversed, I would never charge someone for their own birthday meal, especially if I framed it as something I was doing for them. Rachel and I have not had a proper conversation about it since. We have exchanged a few neutral texts, but the warmth is gone. I keep wondering if I am being entitled or if my reaction is reasonable. I do not expect friends to spend money on me. I just expect clarity and not to be surprised twice in one day. First, by the brunch, and then by the bill. I do not know if this is something I should let go of quietly or if it points to a bigger issue in our friendship. All I know is that what started as a really nice birthday memory now feels complicated and slightly sour, and I hate that money managed to taint something that should have felt simple. Update: my friend planned a surprise brunch for my birthday and then charged me for my meal, and I still feel weird about it. It has been about 3 weeks since I paid Rachel and tried to move on, and I wish I could say the weird feeling faded, but it did not. Instead, it sat there quietly and started changing how I felt about our friendship. We used to text almost every day about random things. After the brunch, that dropped off completely. Our conversations became short and polite, like coworkers, instead of close friends. That shift hurt more than the money part ever did. Eventually, Rachel asked if we could talk, because she could tell something was off. We met at a park near her apartment. I went into the conversation determined to stay calm and not accuse her of anything. I told her that I appreciated the effort she put into planning the brunch and that I knew coordinating people was not easy. I also told her honestly that being charged afterward made me feel uncomfortable and put on the spot. I explained that it was not about expecting a free meal, but about being surprised by a cost I did not agree to ahead of time on my own birthday. Her reaction was defensive at first. She said she felt unappreciated and embarrassed that I questioned her intentions. She said she thought adults splitting their own meals was normal, and that she did not see why birthdays should be different. She also said she spent a lot of emotional energy making the day special and felt like I focused on the one negative part. Hearing that stung because it made me feel like my feelings were being dismissed again. I pushed back gently and told her that intention and impact are not the same thing. I said that from my side, it felt like I was invited to something I did not ask for and then billed later without warning. I told her that if she had told me ahead of time that everyone including me would be paying, I would not have been upset. I also told her that saying not to worry about it and then sending a request later was what crossed the line for me. That is when the conversation shifted. Rachel admitted that she was stressed about money at the time and did not want to say anything during brunch because she did not want to ruin the vibe. She said she assumed people would understand afterward. She also admitted that she did not think about how it would feel for me specifically because she was focused on pulling everything together. That honesty helped, but it also made me realize how little consideration there was for my perspective in the moment. I asked her why she did not cover my meal at least and split the rest with the group. She was quiet for a bit and then said she honestly did not think about it, and once she sent the requests, she felt it was too awkward to change it. That answer hurt more than I expected. It made the whole thing feel careless instead of thoughtless, like I was an afterthought in my own birthday plan. After that conversation, we agreed to take some space, not in a dramatic way, but in a realistic way. We both acknowledged that the situation revealed different expectations and communication styles. Over the next week, I talked to a few other friends who were there. 2 of them said they also thought it was strange that I was charged, but did not want to say anything because Rachel was the organizer. One friend admitted she assumed Rachel would cover me and felt uncomfortable once she realized that was not the case. Knowing that made me feel less alone, but also sad that no one spoke up. Rachel eventually sent me a message saying she had thought more about it and realized she should have handled it differently. She said she was sorry for not being clearer and for putting me in an awkward position. She Venmo'd me back for my meal without making a big announcement. I appreciated the gesture, but I also noticed it came after multiple conversations and outside input. It did not feel instinctive. It felt corrective. Where things stand now is complicated. I accepted the money back and thanked her. We are on speaking terms and there is no open conflict. At the same time, I feel more guarded. This situation made me realize that we see generosity and consideration very differently. I do not think she's a bad person. I also do not think I imagined how uncomfortable this felt. I learned that surprises are only fun when expectations are clear and consent is involved. Being celebrated should not come with a bill afterward, especially when you did not ask for the celebration. I also learned that discomfort does not always come from big betrayals. Sometimes it comes from small moments where you realize someone does not think about you the way you thought they did. I am not sure what this means for the long term of our friendship. I am giving it time instead of forcing things back to how they were. What I do know is that I no longer feel guilty for being upset. I can appreciate effort and still acknowledge poor execution. Both can exist at the same time. Update: my friend planned a surprise brunch for my birthday and then charged me for my meal, and I still feel weird about it. It has been a few months now, and enough time has passed that the emotional fog has cleared. I wanted to share where things ultimately landed because the outcome was quieter and more telling than I expected. Rachel and I did not have a dramatic falling out. There was no big argument or final confrontation. Instead, the friendship slowly redefined itself in a way I did not plan but probably needed. After she sent the money back, we tried to return to normal. We made vague plans that never quite materialized. Texts took longer to answer. Conversation stayed on the surface. At first, I blamed myself for being distant, but when I paid attention, I realized the effort was uneven. I was the one checking in and suggesting meetups. She responded politely, but rarely initiated. That pattern made something click for me. I started reflecting on our friendship over the years and noticed that this was not the first time her version of generosity came with strings or assumptions. There were other moments I had brushed off. Times when she planned something elaborate and expected praise, but got irritated if anyone questioned details. Times when I felt grateful and slightly indebted at the same time. I think the birthday situation brought all of that into focus because it happened on a day that was supposed to be simple and about me. About a month ago, Rachel invited me to her apartment to talk. She said she felt like we were drifting and wanted to be honest. She told me she still felt hurt that I questioned her about the brunch because it made her feel like a bad friend. She said she has always shown love through planning and effort and felt like I rejected that. I listened and then told her something I had been holding back. I told her that what hurt me was not the brunch or the money, but the lack of consideration and communication. I told her that being surprised and then billed made me feel like an accessory to her plan rather than the person being celebrated. I told her that when I tried to talk about it, she focused on defending herself instead of understanding me. I said that made me feel unseen and that it changed how safe I felt being honest with her. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she did not realize how often she equates effort with entitlement to appreciation. She admitted that she struggles with feeling taken for granted and sometimes overcorrects by keeping score. She said the brunch was partly about wanting to feel like a good friend, and that when I questioned it, she felt exposed. That was probably the most self-aware I had ever seen her. We both acknowledged that neither of us handled everything perfectly. I could have spoken up sooner instead of sitting with resentment. She could have communicated expectations clearly and not put me in an awkward position. What mattered was what we did with that understanding. We agreed that our friendship had changed and that forcing it back to its old shape would only cause more friction. Since then, we have settled into a lighter version of friendship. We still check in occasionally. We can be in the same room without tension. We are friendly, but not as close. Surprisingly, that feels right. I no longer feel confused or guilty around her. I do not feel like I owe her gratitude or explanations. The dynamic feels more honest, even if it is less intimate. Looking back, I am glad I trusted my discomfort instead of dismissing it. This situation taught me that it is okay to question things that do not sit right, even when they come wrapped in good intentions. It also taught me that effort without consent can still cause harm, and that being upset does not make you ungrateful or entitled. My birthday this year ended up being memorable for reasons I did not expect. Not because of the brunch, but because it forced me to reevaluate what I want from my friendships. I want clarity. I want mutual consideration. I want celebrations that feel like gifts, not transactions. Losing some closeness was the cost of learning that, and I am finally at peace with it. Stories number 12. My parents think I am disrespectful for not giving them the master bedroom in my own house. I am a 34-year-old woman named Allison and I feel like I'm living in some kind of alternate reality where basic boundaries suddenly make me a bad daughter. I bought my house 2 years ago on my own with no help from anyone, and it was one of the proudest moments of my life. I worked for years, saving and stressing and saying no to things so I could finally afford a place that felt like mine. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in North Carolina with a master bedroom that has an attached bathroom and a walk-in closet. Nothing fancy, but it is comfortable and it represents a lot of sacrifice. My parents, Robert and Linda, are in their early 60s and they live about 6 hours away from me. Growing up, they were loving but very traditional and very firm about hierarchy and respect. In their world, parents come first and children accommodate. That dynamic never fully changed even after I became an adult. They still tend to see my life as an extension of theirs rather than something separate. A few months ago, my parents told me they wanted to come stay with me for a few weeks because my dad needed a minor medical procedure done near my city and they wanted to recover close to the hospital. I said yes without hesitation because I love them and because it made sense. We talked about dates and logistics and I assumed they would stay in the guest room, which is what every other guest has always done. About a week before they arrived, my mom casually mentioned on the phone that they would need the master bedroom because my dad's back is bad and they need their own bathroom. I thought she was joking at first, so I laughed and said the guest room mattress is new and comfortable and the bathroom is right across the hall. She did not laugh back. She said she assumed they would get the master because they are my parents and because it would only be temporary. I told her calmly that the master bedroom is my personal space and that I am not comfortable giving it up. I offered to make the guest room as comfortable as possible and even said I could add extra supports to the bed or get anything else they needed. My mom immediately got offended. She said I was being selfish and inhospitable. She said in her house, guests always get the best room and that it was disrespectful to put my parents in a smaller space while I kept the best one for myself. I reminded her that this is not her house and that I am not a guest in my own home. She told my dad, and then my dad called me separately and said he did not want to be a burden, but that it hurt him that I would not accommodate them given his health issues. That conversation made me feel awful and guilty and angry all at once. I told him I love him and that I am accommodating them by letting them stay for weeks, but that I am allowed to have boundaries. They arrived anyway, and the tension was immediate. I showed them the guest room, and my mom's face tightened. She made comments about how small it was and how she hoped my dad's back would survive. I tried to ignore it and focus on being helpful in other ways. I cooked meals and drove them to appointments and made sure they had everything they needed. On the 3rd day, my mom asked again if I would reconsider the master bedroom at least while my dad was recovering. I said no again and explained that my bedroom is where I decompress and that I am not comfortable sleeping in a smaller room in my own house for weeks. She accused me of choosing comfort over family. I told her I was choosing balance. Things escalated when my Aunt Carol called me out of the blue and said she heard I was being cruel to my parents. Apparently, my mom had been venting to relatives and framing it like I was forcing 2 elderly people to suffer. Carol told me that one day I will regret treating my parents this way. That comment stuck with me because it felt manipulative even if it came from concern. At dinner that night, my dad was quiet and my mom barely spoke to me. The atmosphere was heavy. I started questioning myself, even though logically I knew I was not doing anything outrageous. I kept thinking about how much effort it took to get this house and how quickly I was expected to give up the most personal part of it without question. A few days later, my mom made a comment about how if I ever have kids, I will understand sacrifice. That hurt because it implied that my current boundaries are immature. I told her that being child-free does not mean I do not understand sacrifice and that I have sacrificed plenty to get where I am. She said, money is not everything. I finally snapped and told her that respect goes both ways and that just because they are my parents does not mean they get automatic control over my space. I told her that if the guest room was truly unacceptable, they were free to stay at a hotel nearby. That suggestion made her furious. She said I was threatening to throw them out. My dad stepped in and said he did not want to leave, and that he appreciated me letting them stay, but that he wished things were easier. That broke my heart, because I never wanted this to be a fight. I just wanted my parents to see me as an adult, with her own home and her own limits. Since then, the visit has been tense but manageable. They are still in the guest room, and my mom still makes passive comments. I am counting down the days until they leave, and feeling guilty for that too. I keep replaying everything and wondering if I should have just given in to keep the peace. But another part of me knows that if I had done that, it would set a precedent that my comfort in my own home comes last. I am tired of feeling like a child being scolded for not obeying. So now I am sitting here wondering if I am actually being unreasonable, or if this is just another example of parents struggling to accept that their adult child is no longer obligated to prioritize them above herself. I love my parents, but I also love the life I built, and I do not think those two things should be mutually exclusive. Update. My parents think I am disrespectful for not giving them the master bedroom in my own house. It has been about a month since I first wrote, and my parents have now gone back home, so I finally feel like I can think clearly without constant tension hanging in the air. A lot happened during the rest of their stay, and while nothing exploded in a dramatic way, there were enough moments that forced me to really look at my relationship with my parents and what I am willing to accept going forward. The first week after I posted was honestly the hardest. My mom kept making small comments that were easy to deny but impossible to ignore. She would say things like how she slept terribly or how hotels usually give seniors more consideration. If my dad stretched or rubbed his back, she would look at me pointedly like I was personally responsible. I offered multiple times to buy additional cushions or even replace the mattress with something firmer, and she declined every suggestion while still complaining. My dad tried to play peacemaker, but even that came with guilt. He would say things like, "I know you mean well," or "We do appreciate you letting us stay here," but then follow it with how his recovery would be easier with a private bathroom. Every time he said that, I felt like I was being asked to justify my existence in my own home. I reminded him gently that the guest bathroom was private while they were here, and that no one else was using it. He nodded, but did not argue with my mom when she pushed the issue again later. About halfway through their stay, something shifted. One afternoon, my mom asked if we could talk, and I agreed. She told me she felt hurt, because in her mind, giving them the master bedroom would have been a sign of gratitude for everything they did raising me. She said she never imagined her daughter would say no to something like that. I told her that I am grateful for my upbringing, but that gratitude does not mean surrendering my autonomy as an adult. I told her I need her to respect that this house is not an extension of her home. She did not react well at first and said I was talking like a therapist instead of a daughter. That stung, but I held my ground. I told her that I love her, but that the constant pressure and guilt were damaging our relationship more than any bedroom arrangement ever could. I also told her honestly that if she continued pushing, I would need to shorten future visits because the stress was affecting my mental health. That was the first time I saw real surprise on her face. I do not think she ever expected me to draw a line that clearly. She got quiet, and later that evening, my dad came to me privately and apologized for not stepping in more. He said he did not realize how intense it had been for me and that he did not want to lose closeness with me over something like this. The last week of their stay was noticeably calmer. My mom still was not warm, but she stopped making comments about the room. We actually had a few normal conversations again and even laughed once or twice. When they left, my mom hugged me and said she still did not agree with my choice, but she appreciated everything I did for them. It was not an apology, but it was something. Since they have been home, there has been some distance. My mom calls less often, and when she does, the conversations are polite but surface level. That hurts more than I expected, even though I know it is part of her processing. My dad has checked in a few times and told me his recovery is going well. What I did not expect was how much lighter I would feel once they were gone. The guilt is still there, but it is quieter now. I no longer feel like I betrayed myself to keep the peace, and that feels important. I also realized that if I had given up the master bedroom this time, it would not have been the last expectation placed on me. It would have reinforced the idea that my boundaries are negotiable if enough pressure is applied. I have started thinking about what future visits will look like. I know now that I need to set expectations clearly before anyone arrives. I also know that I cannot keep equating discomfort with disrespect. Sometimes people are uncomfortable because they are being told no for the first time. I still love my parents, and I know they love me, even if they express it in ways that feel controlling. I do not regret my decision, even though it cost me some peace in the short term. If anything, this experience showed me that growing up does not stop at moving out or buying a house. Sometimes it means standing firm. When the people who raised you do not like the version of you that no longer automatically complies. Things are not perfect, but they are honest now, and I think that is a better foundation than resentment quietly building behind forced smiles. I am learning that being a good daughter does not mean shrinking myself, and that lesson was long overdue. Update: my parents think I am disrespectful for not giving them the master bedroom in my own house. This will probably be my final update because things have finally settled into a new normal, and while it is not perfect, it feels real and sustainable in a way it never did before. After my parents went home, there was a stretch of quiet that honestly scared me more than the arguments. My mom did not call for almost 2 weeks, which is unheard of for her. When she finally did, the conversation was polite but distant, and I could tell she was still hurt and maybe a little embarrassed. During that quiet time, I did a lot of reflecting. I realized how much of my adult life I have spent managing my parents' emotions and preemptively adjusting myself to avoid conflict. Buying my house was the first major thing I did completely on my own, and this situation showed me that some part of them still had not accepted that shift. I also realized that my guilt response is deeply ingrained and not always an indicator that I am doing something wrong. About a month after they returned home, my dad called and asked if he could come visit me alone for a weekend. He said my mom needed some space and that he wanted to talk face to face without everything turning into a standoff. I agreed, but I was nervous. When he arrived, it felt different from the start. He stayed in the guest room without comment and did not bring up the bedroom issue at all. On the second night, we sat on the porch and talked longer and more honestly than we have in years. He told me that he sees now how hard I worked to build my life and that he is proud of me even if he does not always say it well. He admitted that he and my mom struggle with letting go of the parent-child dynamic and that my mom especially ties respect to deference. He said that does not make it fair. I asked him directly if they truly believed I was disrespectful or if this was about control and expectations. He was quiet for a long time and then said it was probably both. He said my mom grew up believing that children owe their parents comfort and obedience and that seeing me say no challenged something deep in her. Hearing that did not excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it. A few days after my dad left, my mom called me and surprised me by actually apologizing. Not a perfect apology and not without qualifiers, but it was real. She said she felt pushed aside and unneeded, and that seeing me hold firm made her feel old and irrelevant. She admitted she handled those feelings poorly and took them out on me. She said she still would have made a different choice, but she can see now that it was not about love or gratitude. I told her I appreciate her saying that and that I never wanted to hurt her, but I also cannot live my life prioritizing other people's comfort over my own sense of self. I told her I need our relationship to be based on mutual respect, not obligation. She did not argue. She just said she will try. Since then, things have been slowly improving. Our calls are warmer again, and while there is still some awkwardness, it no longer feels like a power struggle. I have been clear that future visits will involve the guest room, and that if that does not work for them, we will plan shorter stays or help with a hotel. Surprisingly, she accepted that without pushing. What this experience ultimately taught me is that boundaries do not destroy healthy relationships. They reveal unhealthy dynamics that were already there. I also learned that standing up for myself does not make me selfish or ungrateful, even when it disappoints people I love. I am at peace with my decision now. I sleep in my own bed without guilt, and when I walk through my house, it still feels like mine. My relationship with my parents is different, but it is more honest, and I would rather have that than comfort built on resentment. If anyone reading this is struggling with something similar, I want to say this. You are allowed to grow beyond the roles your family assigned you. You are allowed to say no without justifying your existence. And sometimes the hardest part of adulthood is realizing that your parents are just people too, and that loving them does not mean surrendering yourself. Stories number 13. My daughter's teacher said her report is immoral. I never thought I would be sitting at my kitchen table shaking with anger because of a word a teacher used about my child. But here I am, trying to calm down enough to even write this. My daughter's name is Natalie. She is 12 years old in 7th grade, and she is one of the kindest kids I know. She is also curious, stubborn, and not afraid to ask questions. I've always encouraged that. I want her to think for herself, not just repeat what adults tell her. A few weeks ago, Natalie was given a big assignment in her social studies class. Her teacher, Mr. Collins, told them they had to write a report about a person who changed history. He said they could choose anyone as long as they explained why that person mattered. Natalie came home excited. She said she wanted to write about a woman named Margaret Sanger. I didn't know much about her, so I asked why. Natalie said they had briefly mentioned her in class when talking about women's rights, and she wanted to learn more. We went to the library together. We looked things up online. Natalie took notes, highlighted pages, and worked really hard. She wrote about how Margaret Sanger fought for birth control access, how she believed women should have control over their own bodies, and how controversial she was in her time. Natalie didn't write anything graphic. It was all age-appropriate, historical, and respectful. I read the report before she turned it in. It was well written. She explained both sides, the people who supported Sanger and the people who hated her. She didn't praise everything blindly. She just explained why Sanger mattered in history. Natalie was proud when she turned it in. A week later, she came home quiet. Too quiet. She went straight to her room and didn't even ask for a snack, which is how I knew something was wrong. When I asked her what happened, she handed me her paper. On the top, in red ink, it said, "Inappropriate topic. Immoral content. See me after class." Her grade was much lower than it should have been. Natalie said that when she went to talk to Mr. Collins, he told her that writing about birth control and women's reproductive rights was not appropriate for school. He said it was immoral and against his values. He told her she should have chosen someone cleaner. Natalie asked him what was immoral about writing history. He told her that some topics should not be celebrated and that she needed to learn to respect moral boundaries. She said he didn't yell, but he talked to her like she had done something bad. She cried while telling me. She said, "I thought I did everything right." I was furious. The next day, I emailed Mr. Collins and asked for a meeting. He agreed. When I went to the school, the principal, Mrs. Harris, was also there. Mr. Collins looked uncomfortable, but not apologetic. I asked him why he called my daughter's work immoral. He said that discussing birth control and sexual topics was not appropriate for middle school students. I told him Natalie didn't write about sex. She wrote about history and women's rights. He said birth control itself was a moral issue and that he didn't feel comfortable promoting it. I said, "You weren't asked to promote it. You were asked to grade her report." Mrs. Harris tried to calm things down and said they wanted to keep the curriculum age appropriate. I asked her what was inappropriate about explaining historical movements. She said some families might not agree with those topics. I said some families don't agree with evolution or civil rights either. That doesn't mean you stop teaching history. Mr. Collins said, "I have the right to uphold my values in my classroom." I said, "You don't have the right to shame my child for doing her assignment." Natalie was allowed to choose her topic. She followed the rules. She worked hard. And then she was told her work was immoral because her teacher didn't personally agree with the subject. Mrs. Harris said they would review the grading. A few days later, Natalie's grade was raised, but Mr. Collins never apologized. He just wrote, "Grade adjusted." Natalie is still upset. She told me she doesn't want to raise her hand in his class anymore. She said she feels like if she says the wrong thing, she'll get in trouble. That breaks my heart more than anything. School is supposed to be where kids learn to think, not where they learn to be scared of ideas. I don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to push this further. Another part of me worries about making things harder for Natalie if I become that parent. But I can't stop thinking about how easily he used the word immoral about a child's schoolwork. That word sticks. It makes you feel dirty, wrong, ashamed. Natalie didn't do anything wrong. She followed instructions. She used real sources. She wrote respectfully. She didn't push opinions. She just explained history. And still, an adult in power told her her work was morally wrong. I keep wondering how many other kids have had their ideas quietly shut down because they didn't match a teacher's personal beliefs. How many kids learn to stay quiet instead of curious? I don't want my daughter to grow up thinking learning is dangerous. I don't want her to believe that asking questions is bad. I want her to know that knowledge is not immoral. Right now, I'm trying to decide what matters more, keeping peace or standing up for my child. And honestly, the answer feels obvious, even if it's not easy. Update. My daughter's teacher said her report is immoral. After I wrote everything out, I decided I couldn't just let it sit. Natalie was still coming home quiet, still double-checking everything she wrote for that class, still asking me, "Is this okay?" Like she was afraid of being wrong again. That hurt more than my own anger. I requested another meeting, this time with the school district office involved. I didn't go in yelling. I went in with copies of the assignment sheet, Natalie's report, and the grading rubric. I also brought the paper with immoral content written across the top in red. The district representative was a woman named Miss Turner. She read everything carefully and asked Mr. Collins to explain his reasoning. He repeated what he said before. He said some topics went against his personal values and that he didn't think middle school students should be exposed to them. Miss Turner asked him where, in the assignment guidelines, Natalie broke a rule. He couldn't point to anything specific. She asked him if he graded any other student lower because he personally disagreed with their topic. He said no. She asked him why Natalie was different. He didn't answer right away. He just said her topic crossed a moral line for him. Miss Turner said, very clearly, that teachers are not allowed to grade based on personal moral beliefs. She said their job is to follow curriculum standards and grading rubrics. She said history includes topics that make people uncomfortable, but discomfort is not the same as inappropriateness. She said writing immoral on a child's paper was unprofessional and harmful. For the first time, Mr. Collins looked embarrassed. He was told he had to attend a training on bias in grading and classroom conduct. He was also told to write Natalie an apology. I didn't expect that. I didn't go in demanding punishment. I just wanted him to understand what he did. A few days later, Natalie came home holding a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me without saying anything. It was a note from Mr. Collins. It said he was sorry for the word he used. It said he should have handled the situation differently. It said he didn't mean to make her feel bad or ashamed. Natalie read it twice. Then she said, "I don't think he's really sorry, but at least he knows he was wrong." The next week in class, something surprising happened. Mr. Collins made an announcement. He said he wanted to remind everyone that their classroom was a place for learning, even about difficult topics, and that students would not be punished for choosing challenging subjects as long as they followed the assignment rules. He didn't say Natalie's name, but she knew. She told me she felt like he was looking at her when he said it. Things are still not perfect. Natalie is still more cautious in that class than she used to be, but she has started raising her hand again. She even told me she's thinking about writing her next report on someone else controversial, just to prove to herself that she can. Some parents found out what happened, and a few reached out to me quietly. One mom said her son had been discouraged from writing about certain topics too, but she never complained because she didn't want trouble. She thanked me for speaking up. That made me realize how easy it is for this kind of thing to keep happening if no one challenges it. Mr. Collins has not spoken to me directly since the meeting. When I see him at school events, he nods politely and looks away. I don't need him to like me. I just need him to treat my child fairly. Natalie told me something the other night that made me tear up. She said, "I'm glad you didn't just let it go. If you had, I think I would have stopped caring about school." That's when I knew I made the right choice. This was never about making a teacher look bad. It was about making sure my daughter didn't learn that her thoughts were dangerous or dirty. She's learning again. She's curious again. She's asking questions again. And every time she does, I'm reminded that standing up for her wasn't causing trouble. Update: my daughter's teacher said her report is immoral. I didn't think there would be more after the last update, but life doesn't really care what you think is done. For a while, things felt stable. Natalie was calmer, her grades were steady, and she stopped second-guessing every sentence she wrote. I started to breathe again. I thought maybe we had reached the end of this. Then about a month later, Natalie came home and said, "Mom, something weird happened today." She told me that another student had chosen a topic about the civil rights movement and mentioned racism and segregation. Mr. Collins didn't call it immoral, but he told the class that some topics need to be handled carefully so we don't offend people. He kept looking at Natalie while he said it. She said she felt like it was a warning meant for her. I emailed Miss Turner again. Not angry, just concerned. I told her what Natalie said and that I was worried this was turning into subtle targeting instead of open grading issues. Miss Turner responded quickly. She said she would observe the class for a week. Natalie didn't know she was coming, but I did. The day Miss Turner sat in the back of the room, Natalie said the class felt different. Mr. Collins was more careful with his words. He praised students more. He didn't say anything about offensive topics. At the end of that week, Miss Turner called me. She said she noticed a pattern of cautious language that could be interpreted as discouraging certain ideas. She said it wasn't severe enough for discipline, but it was enough that they would continue monitoring him. She told me something that stuck with me. She said, "Sometimes people don't realize how much power their words have over kids until someone makes them look at it." About 2 weeks after that, Mr. Collins requested a meeting with me and Natalie. I didn't want to go, but Natalie said she wanted to. She said she didn't want to be scared of him forever. We sat in the same room where this all started. Mr. Collins looked tired. He said he had been thinking a lot about what happened. He said he grew up in a very strict household where certain topics were treated as shameful. He said he didn't realize how much of that he was carrying into his classroom. He apologized again, this time out loud, and not just on paper. He said he was sorry for making Natalie feel small. He said he was trying to do better. Natalie looked at him and said, "I just want to feel safe to learn." He nodded and said, "You deserve that." I don't know if he's completely changed. People rarely change overnight. But something did shift after that meeting. Natalie started telling me about class again, not with fear, but with normal kid complaints like homework and boring lectures. She even said once, Mr. Collins asked what we thought today and didn't act weird about any answers. That might sound small, but to me, it felt huge. The end of the school year came faster than I expected. On the last day, Natalie brought home her report card. Her grade in social studies was good, not perfect, but fair. She looked at it and smiled. Later that night, she said, "I'm glad I didn't quit trying." I told her, "I'm glad you didn't either." Looking back, this whole thing changed both of us. It changed how she sees school, but in a better way now. She knows adults can be wrong. She knows it's okay to question them. She knows her ideas matter. It changed me too. I learned that being that parent is sometimes exactly what your child needs. Silence doesn't protect kids. It just protects problems. Mr. Collins might always remember Natalie as the student who caused trouble. But Natalie will always remember herself as the kid who didn't let someone shame her for learning. And if she carries that with her into the rest of her life, then every uncomfortable meeting, every angry email, and every stressful night was worth it.